Chapter 183. Big surprise. Wow! As Lin Chuan closed in, the sky itself seemed to condense into water. A raging, towering wave coalesced above them and spun into a vast whirlpool that wrapped around Bo Shi. A blinding streak of swordlight sliced through the air toward her with unstoppable force. Bo Shi didn't dodge. She met the blade with a calm slap of her palm. Boom! Swordlight met flesh. The impact shoved Bo Shi back several paces. She stared at her right hand in disbelief. Where the condensed soul force had been broken, a thin line of blood ran across her knuckle. "Senior, if you keep hanging on, you'll really lose to me," Lin Chuan taunted. Blue radiance flared across Bo Si's body. An imposing aura swelled outward, and under that glow, a colossal golden silhouette appeared in the sky, a human-shaped phantom clutching a massive trident. Poseidon? Lin Chuan's eyes widened. Behind Bo Shi, 9 soul rings glowed in a neat row, 8 black and 1 red. Her body did not change shape, only those rings marked her power. "Finally getting serious, huh? Then count me in," Lin Chuan said with a smile. Ye Ying's twin swords hummed in his hands, and the soul rings behind him lit up too, 1 yellow, 2 purple, 3 black, and 2 red, a cascade of colors that even Bo Shi couldn't help but narrow her eyes at. Bo Shi's blue light expanded at once, and a field of azure rolled out from her, enveloping Poseidon Mountain and spreading fast across the surrounding seas. "Poseidon Domain!" someone cried. Sea Dragon Douluo's expression tightened. He hadn't expected her to use that power so quickly. With the domain condensed, Bo Shi could draw on the sea's power, replenishing her soul force and converting the ocean's might into raw attack power. In effect, Lin Chuan was now facing the sea itself. Lin Chuan didn't rush. He waited for the right moment. Soul force rippled along his form, and then his presence blurred into afterimages. The twin swords in his hands split into countless streaks of light, striking with strange, unpredictable trajectories. Bo Shi lashed out, trying to catch the blades, but when her fingers touched them, they felt slick and intangible. Gentle, evasive forces slipped past her grip and struck her directly. Seawater surged, wrapping her, dissolving most of the blade's edge as they passed into that liquefied medium. "Eh?" Lin Chuan was surprised. The first time his blades had been blunted like that. Bo Shi seized the chance and fired a rapid series of fists, each blow carrying terrifying force at different points on his chest. The roars of her fist shadows rolled like waves. Lin Chuan's swordplay changed, growing furious and fierce. Flame covered his blades, and their power leapt. Bangs and clashes rang out as fists and swords met. The pressure of wind carved the air. Buildings and vegetation shook and cracked. Seawater leapt skyward. After a fierce exchange, Lin Chuan managed to shove Bo Shi aside. He was startled. She didn't seem bound by the suppressive effects of the water of all things the way others were. Her strength had increased many levels. Is that the effect of the Poseidon domain? He wondered. It was. Bo Shi's domain let her ignore the usual watery suppression. With the sea at her command, she truly became an invincible force on the water, and Lin Chuan found the challenge intoxicating. Flames flared on his body. Wind and thunder wings stirred behind him into a black shadow that carried him forward. He chopped, slashed, swept, and feinted in rapid succession, alternating water and fire mysteries with power generation techniques. The attacks were fierce and relentless. Bo Shi was inside the onslaught, surprised but unhurried. Swordlight and fist shadow braided together. The air was punctuated by roars. Outside the Poseidon temple, Sea Dragon Douluo gaped. "He's actually on par with the High Priest, and he's only a contra," he blurted. Sea Girl Douluo frowned. "The High Priest doesn't want to lose, does she?" "It's impossible," Sea Dragon Douluo said darkly. With the Poseidon domain, the High Priest can continuously restore her soul power and convert the sea's strength into attack. If she can't break you, then... Besides, Sea Girl trailed off. Bo Shi still had a trump card, the power of the Poseidon temple itself. For Lin Chuan, the ocean power erupting from Bo Shi felt like an unfathomable abyss. Now he truly understood why she was called the Invincible Ocean. With the terrain in her favor, she was terrifying. "Again!" he shouted and flashed above her, both swords slashing down. Bo Shi blocked with her arms. The condensed current ripped at her fists and swept her down. She crashed into the sea like a meteor. The waves roared. Lin Chuan surged forward on his wind and thunder wings. His twin swords became living things, serpentine, leaping, rolling, chopping with domineering force. He and the swords moved as one, pouring everything into his blade art. He felt it inside him like a system awakening, an exhilaration and a sharpening of skill. You exert your full strength in swordsmanship and gain much. Your proficiency with Thunder Sword and your mastery of sword realms deepen. You continue to use the fire of all things and profit greatly. Your understanding of the fire mystery has greatly deepened. You continue to use the water of all things and profit greatly. Your understanding of the water mystery has greatly deepened. Lin Chuan had no time to dwell on the messages. He was all in, heart pounding with a fierce delight. Close combat. This was a man's romance. In mere breaths, they traded hundreds of moves. Both took wounds. Bo Saishi's red robe was cut in many places. Lin Chuan took several palm blows. Instead of weakening them, the injuries only spurred their ferocity. My sword work isn't good enough. It needs to be faster and softer. So fast there's no time to defend, Lin Chuan thought. If it had more power, if it could burst and sever the sea god's domain in one strike, I could finish her. Bo Saishi frowned under the storm of swordlight. She couldn't hold on forever. The seventh soul ring behind her flared, a deep black light spreading and painting her whole body in ink-dark blue. Seventh soul skill, true body of the sea god, she cried. The sea god's shadow reappeared behind her, and she fused with it. Brilliant blue light swelled, followed by suffocating pressure that forced Lin Chuan to skid across the water. She's changed again, he thought, feeling the domain grow more steadfast. With the sea god's true body, the water element condensed and focused, and Lin Chuan found the water mystery easier to perceive. This pressure isn't enough, his eyes flashed. He raised his momentum. The twin swords hummed and drew the swirling force of the currents onto their blades. At that instant, from extreme yin he flipped to extreme yang. Twin flaming lions leapt from the waters. Water, fire, and flowing gold slash. The blade light forged by extreme golden force carried water and fire mysteries together. Space itself shivered where the swords cut. Bo Saishi's heart tightened. Danger screamed at her. She poured soul power into herself, and her soul ring flashed again. Ninth soul skill, the sea god returns. Golden and blue light condensed into a majestic giant. Its calm, stern eyes shone. It clenched its right hand. The sea god's trident in the Poseidon temple trembled, turned into a stream of light, and flew into the giant's grip. The whole sea seemed to bless the figure. An unstoppable might gathered in that weapon. Golden 13 tridents, third style, never return. The trident hurled at Lin Chuan like a collapsing part of the ocean. From his vantage, the sea swelled and rose into a towering wall bearing down on him. For the first time, Lin Chuan tasted fear. He gritted his teeth and drove his swords forward like meteors. Flames in the void snapped alive. The swords cut clean, leaving two streaks of fire through the air. Their momentum thinned, but their power concentrated. The fire within Lin Chuan blazed hotter. He felt the second level of the fire of all things unlock. Open, he roared. The twin swords struck the sea god's trident head-on. Boom. The shockwave tore the air. The sky seemed to change color. Sea currents surged up, wrapping around them both. The barrier of water rose so high that nothing outside could see within. The soul pressure was so vast it blocked remote mental detection. No one could tell what was happening inside. Xiao Chuan. Du Guyan and Ye Lingling watched the catastrophe-like collapse of sea and rock with clenched hearts, worry etched on their faces. The seven sacred pillar Douluo also stared in horror from a distance, chills running down their spines. Who won? Several voices asked, their curiosity raw. But for now, all they could do was wait. The ocean hid the battle's end beneath its roaring veil. Chapter 184. Tide waves towered like walls, surging into the sky and draping the horizon in a curtain of water. Just when everyone's tension reached its peak, a faint gleam cleaved through the seawall and shot toward Poseidon Island. The Poseidon Trident. Immediately, the sea fell away, and Lin Chuan and Bo Saishi reappeared on the island. They stood apart. Blue light on Bo Saishi's body had dimmed. Her red robes were torn in many places, and a fierce aura still shimmered around her, but she had no other obvious wounds. Lin Chuan, by contrast, was a wreck, his clothes shredded, chest exposed, blood streaming down into the water. He breathed out sharply, and a soft green glow wrapped him. Wounds knit before their eyes, flesh closed and healed so fast no scar remained. Ye Lingling's twin swords, transformed into streaks of light, flew back and merged into him. Thank you, Senior, for the guidance. Your martial attainments are superb. I lost this time. Lin Chuan cupped his fist in a gesture of respect, and with that ended the duel. Bo Saishi let her soul power settle. She waved her right hand, and the turbulent spiritual fluctuations smoothed away. She regarded Lin Chuan and finally sighed. You didn't lose, and I didn't win either. It's a tie. Her expression softened. In her decades of experience, only Tang Chen and Qian Daoliu had been comparably formidable. In this fight, the young man's soul power had been fully exposed, yet he had been able to match her despite only being at level 90. That kind of raw aptitude was rare. Even Bo Saichi, Tang Chen, and Qian Daoliu couldn't claim such a single-minded talent. He had pushed the boundaries, and she had been pushed in turn. Nor had she expected the water element domain to be used against her in such a way. The young man was already, in many respects, ahead. Senior, you are too kind. I owe you thanks, Lin Chuan said quietly. Under Bo Saichi's pressure, he'd broken through, unexpectedly, into the second level of the mystery of fire. The sudden leap in realm had changed his control over the elements qualitatively and saved him years of cultivation. He felt gratitude despite the surprise. Occasional battles with strong opponents could teach more than seclusion ever would. Du Guyan hurried over, concern plain on his face. Xiao Chuan, are you all right? Lin Chuan smiled and shook his head. He pulled a fresh set of clothes from the spirit storage guide, dressed, and returned Bo Saichi's nod with a slight salute. We won't bother you any longer, Senior. Please excuse us. Bo Saichi didn't stay. After Lin Chuan bowed to the 7 sacred pillars Douluo, he left the Poseidon Mountain with Du Guyan and Ye Lingling. Only when their figures were completely gone did the 7 sacred pillars Douluo step forward. High Priest, who won between you and that youth? Sea Dragon Douluo asked, curiosity winning out. Bo Saichi glanced at them without hiding anything. There was no victor. We were evenly matched. If we'd fought to a definite result, it would have taken days and nights. How would he compare to Tang Chen and Qian Daoliu back then? Hainv Douluo asked. Bo Saichi's eyes clouded with memory. She pondered a moment, then sighed. I hate to admit it, but his strength is at least on par with the 3 of us. The fields he commands are exceptionally powerful. If I hadn't been anchored in the right place, using the full power of the Poseidon domain and the trident, I might have lost. The 6-titled Douluo exchanged shocked looks. If Bo Saichi held such an opinion, a single capture of that youth when he set foot on the island would not have been embarrassing at all. Bo Saichi continued. However, he clearly could not break the Poseidon domain while I held it, and we didn't even bring the full might of the Poseidon temple into play. Even if the battle continued, the High Priest would still likely win. Sea Dragon Douluo's voice was steady and full of confidence. Indeed. Bo Saichi gave a small, rueful chuckle and shook her head. Go back to your posts. Remember to come to the Poseidon temple tomorrow for a meeting. As you command, High Priest. The 6 bowed in unison and left. Alone, Bo Saichi looked up at the sky and murmured, Could I have won? She exhaled, resolving to think it over. The young man before her was a genius. If he reached the 99th level of cultivation, even borrowing the Poseidon Temple's power might not be enough to subdue him. Only the Lord Poseidon himself might stand a chance. Poseidon watched the battle from the spirit realm with mounting astonishment. This kid isn't even a god yet, and his control over elemental power rivals mine? He muttered in disbelief. Many gods had never achieved such finesse in harnessing the power of heaven and earth. Poseidon, after millennia and the unifying belief of the sea, had only gradually grown into his mastery. That a mere teenager had matched him in this aspect stung. He forced a tight smile. What a little monster. There was a flash of jealousy, but then a more poisonous thought crossed him. Apparently the Earth God, who had the right to choose a successor through the 9 trials, had favored some other girl instead of this prodigy. The image of the Earth God's regret made Poseidon's mood improve somewhat. Then Poseidon's face hardened. My successor is close to this youth. They even flirt. The possibility that the youth's friend might be endangered troubled him. He imagined Lin Chuan ascending to godhood and perhaps rising to God King within a short time. A first-level god combined with a god king would be a delicate situation. More importantly, soul masters capable of inheriting a godhood were rare. If Lin Chuan could pass the trials and claim a godly mantle, it might free Poseidon to travel the lower planes, an irresistible idea. Then let things happen carefully, Poseidon whispered, as if comforting himself. Whether his concern was genuine or merely an excuse to manipulate events, only he knew. After the battle, Lin Chuan reunited with Shui Binger and the others. They shared their trial experiences in detail and set out early the next morning to leave Sea God Island and head back to the Tiando Empire. There was little to worry about regarding Binger and the others' safety. Lin Chuan had left the blue-silver pearl behind, so even if anyone was injured during the trial, recovery would be fast. Besides, the 7 sacred pillars Douluo and Bo Saishi were present. After yesterday's contest, Bo Saishi would undoubtedly look after them. As they reached the coast, a huge shadow moved across the water. Moments later, a giant demon soul great white shark broke the surface, followed by more than a dozen others. Light flashed gray-blue, and the great white shark king transformed into human form and strode onto the beach. It was Lin Chuan's first time seeing the king's humanoid shape, long gray-blue hair that trailed nearly to the ground, eyes the same color, a tall, elegant frame, and a distinctive, exotic beauty. "Greetings, elders." The great white shark king, the one called Xiaobai, approached Lin Chuan and bowed respectfully. "Senior Poseidon told us of your departure. Please allow us to escort you off Poseidon Island." Xiaobai smiled. "Do not worry. You are honored guests of Poseidon Island. My clan will ensure you reach land safely." With a flick of her hand, the sharks made a clear path. Xiaobai resumed her true form and signaled for Lin Chuan, Du Guyan, and Ye Lingling to stand on her back. The 3 of them mounted without hesitation. As she lashed her great tail, the waves carried them away. Soon the island was nothing more than a black speck on the horizon. Riding a demon soul great white shark drastically shortened the return time. With Xiaobai as their escort, one of the sea's major overlords, there was no danger from other marine spirit beasts. "Honored guests, where shall we take you?" Xiaobai asked crisply as they skimmed across the water. She'd witnessed the fight on Sea God Mountain and was understandably curious and somewhat impressed by a soul master who could contend with one of the island's strongest. She kept a careful eye on Lin Chuan. Du Guyan answered before Lin Chuan could. "Xiao Chuan isn't returning to Academy City. He plans to go back to the Earth Temple to continue the trials." Lin Chuan nodded. "Xiaobai, please bring us to a point close to Xingluo City." "Understood. Please hold on." Demon Soul great white sharks are terrifyingly fast. After 3 days of swift travel, the dark outline of land appeared. They chose a deserted stretch of shore to disembark. Returning to solid ground felt comfortable after so much time at sea. "Thank you, Xiaobai," Lin Chuan said quietly. Xiaobai waved a graceful hand. "It is my duty." "Farewell." After a brief goodbye, she dove beneath the waves and soon vanished where sea met sky. Lin Chuan watched her go, then turned to his companions. "Come on. Binger and the others' trials are starting. We should get ready." Chapter 185. People are different. As soon as they crossed into the Xingluo Empire, the 3 of them headed straight for the Earth Temple. The plan was simple. Escort Du Guyan there first, then Lin Chuan and Ye Lingling would return to Shuiyuan City. Unlike the western coast of the Tiando Empire, the western coast of Xingluo was desolate. Broad swaths of desert and gobi stretched for miles. Lin Chuan had already been here once, looking for earth fire. This time he stayed on the ground instead of taking the Thunderwind wings, because he wanted to spend more time with Du Guyan while traveling. Once they delivered her to the Earth Temple, he and Ye Lingling would leave, and Du Guyan would be alone again. He didn't like the thought of that, but these were dangerous times, and there was no avoiding it. The balance of the Douluo Continent had shifted ever since Lin Chuan's moves. Nobody could predict whether Qian Renshui or Bibi Dong would complete the god trial early, form the Wuhun Empire, and strike suddenly at the remaining forces of the 2 empires. In the original history, the Spirit Hall had laid siege to the 7 Treasures Glazed sect and the Blue Lightning Tyrannosaurus family. 8,000 people, including 4 titled Douluo, had attacked the Blue Lightning family and nearly wiped them out. The Seven Treasures glazed sect had also suffered heavy casualties. Now Snowfield City would be an obvious target for the Spirit Hall. Even if Dugu Bo and Shui Longchen resisted, they could not be sure of victory. The chances the Shui and Ye families would be devastated were real. That was why Lin Chuan had insisted on taking personal command of Snowfield City. As they drew near the mountains surrounding the Earth Temple, the land grew less empty than before. When they passed through a not very wide stand of trees, Ye Lingling suddenly stopped, frozen in place. Lingling, Duguyan blinked, puzzled. Lin Chuan halted as well and probed with his mental power. A thread of life energy floated toward them from the forest depths. "I feel something pulling me," Ye Lingling murmured. Duguyan, still confused, asked, "Do you want to go see?" "Yes, let's take a look. It can't be anything bad." Lin Chuan agreed, and they changed course to follow Ye Lingling toward the center of the grove. Along the way, they encountered several weak soul beasts, but none were worth killing. The three of them merely unfurled a little soul force and frightened them off. Before long, they reached the spot Ye Lingling had sensed. Nothing. Duguyan scanned the area, but found nothing obvious. "It's hiding," Lin Chuan said. With more refined mental probing, he identified an anomaly. One tree among many was subtly different, radiating a faint life force that ordinary people could not detect. Even a titled Douluo would have to search carefully to find it. Duguyan frowned. "It looks like an ordinary tree. Is there something special about it?" "This isn't an ordinary tree," Lin Chuan said with surprise. "It's 100,000-year-old soul beast." Ye Lingling and Duguyan both stared. A soul beast that old, and it was a plant form? That made no sense by the usual rules. Such high-level soul beasts usually grew in the Qingdao Great Forest or the far north, not here. How could a 100,000-year soul beast be hiding like this? Duguyan asked, bewildered. No matter how she looked at it, it looked like a normal tree. It's merged with the surrounding nature, Lin Chuan explained. Unless your mental power is far superior to its own, it's almost impossible to spot. He had grasped the truth because of the mystery of life and the strength of his perception. "Then why did it attract Lingling?" Duguyan asked. Lin Chuan smiled. "Well, why don't we ask it?" He reached out and tapped the tree trunk. "If you brought us here on purpose, tell us why." Suddenly, the tree burst into a gentle green glow. Its ordinary bark seemed to recede, replaced by lush foliage and leaves that shimmered with emerald light. A voice, neither distinctly male nor female, echoed in their minds, ethereal, sincere. "Thank you for coming. You lured us here?" Ye Lingling asked. "Yes." "What kind of soul beast are you?" Duguyan asked. "I am a tree of life, 100,000 years old." Lin Chuan's expression changed. "A tree of life? That's the top-tier healing soul beast. If it became a martial soul, it would rival the nine-hearted begonia. You attracted us deliberately. Aren't you afraid we might try to take your soul ring?" he asked, curious. The tree of life would be a perfect match for Ye Lingling, and a 100,000-year soul ring would be an incredible prize. "I know that," the tree said calmly. "I can sense you have reached a bottleneck and need a soul ring to break through. My soul ring, however, is not suitable for you. Absorbing it directly would be too risky for her." Lin Chuan raised an eyebrow. "Then why bring you to us?" The tree answered plainly, "I want to sacrifice myself to this girl and become her soul ring." They all froze. A 100,000-year-old soul beast was volunteering to die and be absorbed. It wasn't the usual behavior. Lin Chuan grinned wryly. "You're ambitious. You know something, don't you?" "I have carried inherited memories since my birth. I know of the gods," the Tree of Life admitted. Ye Lingling and Duguyan exchanged confused looks. Lin Chuan explained, "If she becomes a god and goes to the divine world, she can resurrect soul beasts. When a soul beast dies, most of its soul enters the soul ring and some remains in the soul bone. A being who reaches godhood can restore them completely. Powerful soul beasts can even gain divine power in the process and transform into divine beasts." Duguyan's eyes widened. "So you want her to bring you into the god realm and resurrect you?" "Yes." The tree's voice was steady. "I am tired of endless reincarnation. The next heavenly tribulation is coming. Surviving it would only mean more cycles of life. I want to test the chance of resurrection in the divine world rather than continue to drift." Lin Chuan couldn't help but admire the tree's courage. Not every soul beast would trust humans so completely. Lingling, this is a once-in-a-lifetime chance. I had planned to help you hunt suitable soul beasts, but this may be better. Yi Lingling's eyes flared with determination. She did not hesitate. I promise, if I pass the trial and become a god, I will resurrect you. I don't want to endure this endless cycle any longer. I believe you. Let us begin. The Tree of Life's voice was quiet but resolute. Then the forest was bathed in blazing red light. The Tree of Life was surrounded by a surge of spiritual power as a sacrificial field spread outward, making the air hum with pressure. Under that crimson glow, everything seemed to freeze. Lin Chuan pulled Duguyan back a short distance and watched in silence. This sacrifice was on a different scale, more spectacular, more terrifying than any ordinary soul beast's death. That's a terrifying aura, Duguyan breathed. Lin Chuan explained softly, this is the unique energy of 100,000-year soul beast sacrifice. Even a titled Douluo would find it difficult to interfere while that field holds. Duguyan couldn't hide her envy. Lingling's luck is unbelievable. 100,000-year soul ring for the 7th ring. That was beyond enviable. Red blood flames began to flare along the Tree of Life's trunk and leaves. The flames burned not only its bark, but its blood, its life, and 100,000 years of cultivation. Chapter 186, Faint with Flesh. The blood flames flared hotter, deepening from bright red to a dark, sanguine glow. The massive body of the 100,000-year Tree of Life began to fade, its form turning translucent like a crimson crystal, condensing as if drawn to a single point. A concentrated orb of red light swelled, and the verdant tree before them withered completely. This was the tree's essence, the 100,000-year soul ring. The soul ring drifted free and floated toward Yi Lingling, merging into her. The enormous soul power, siphoned back from the life spirit hall, surged through her, coursing through her like a rising tide. Her aura rose in an almost geometric escalation, 70th level, 71, 72, racing upward until it reached the 77th level. As the red light rolled like a tide across the void, a fragment of green trunk, part of the Tree of Life skeleton, detached and hovered, drawn to Yi Lingling. Under Lin Chuan's and Duguyan's stunned gazes, the piece gleamed like an emerald. When it fused with her, a shadow of the Tree of Life rose behind Yi Lingling for a moment, then faded away. The blood-red radiance dimmed, leaving only the residual energy of the sacrifice. It took another half-hour for that energy to dissipate entirely. Yi Lingling blinked, her lashes threaded with the last traces of red fire. Then a soft green light seeped from her, replacing the flames. She opened her eyes slowly, her skin shone with a crystalline luster, making her look ethereal, like a goddess descended to earth. "Brother Chuan, my soul power, it reached level 77, she announced, her beautiful eyes bright with happiness. "Not bad," Lin Chuan said, a smile in his voice. The 100,000-year soul ring and the ancient soul bone had boosted her by 7 levels in an instant, far faster than he'd expected. 7 levels was enormous. She now needed only 3 more levels to complete the test. No matter how he looked at it, it was excellent news. Duguyan stepped forward, curiosity written all over his face. "Lingling, that's incredible. Tell me, what soul skills did you gain?" Yi Lingling didn't hold back. "My 7th soul skill is True Body of Life. When the Life Spirit Avatar releases the Light of Life, it bathes designated allies in life energy. It halves their soul skill consumption and greatly increases their recovery. Basically, as long as they don't fall in battle, they can keep fighting, almost immortal while the effect lasts." Lin Chuan raised an eyebrow. "What about the cost? Is there a time limit?" Yi Lingling shook her head. "There's no strict time limit on the avatar itself, but it consumes a lot of soul power to maintain. Still, after activating it, my own consumption is halved, and the Light of Life can be combined with my healing soul skills to restore allies more effectively." Duguyan sighed with a mixture of awe and envy. "That's fair, otherwise it would be broken." Lin Chuan nodded, then asked, "And the soul bone, what does the trunk fragment do?" "There are 2 soul bone abilities," Yi Lingling explained. "The first is a domain-type skill called Prosperity Domain. When I activate it, I can command plants within a 20-mile radius. They can take on part of the damage when I'm attacked, sharing my wounds in a sense. The second is open all rivers. It converts the life force of nearby vegetation into soul power and mental energy that I can absorb. It can restore my energy and even assist my cultivation. Lin Chuan and Du Guyan listened intently. As Yi Lingling finished, Lin Chuan's expression betrayed his amazement. "Isn't that the ultimate sustain?" he murmured. With plants able to absorb damage and feed their vitality back to her as soul power, combined with the life spirit avatar's halving of consumption and enhanced recovery, Ye Lingling was effectively a walking, regenerating fortress. In combat, with her on their side, everyone else could fight without worrying about dying. And for enemies, taking her down quickly would be near impossible. Even without counting external protection, her defensive and restorative toolkit made her extremely hard to kill in the short term. "Lingling," Lin Chuan said with a grin, "you've become a strategic weapon." Ye Lingling took the compliment in stride and smiled seriously. "That's good. With this power, I can help you too, Brother Chuan." Hearing that, Lin Chuan's features softened. He reached for her and drew her into his arms, pressing a gentle kiss to her little lips. It was soft, sweet, pure, and wonderful. Yi Lingling's cheeks flushed crimson, and her eyes sparkled even brighter. The moment between them turned intimate, and Du Guyan, watching from the side, pouted, suddenly very jealous. "Xiao Chuan, you're biased! I want some too!" Before Lin Chuan could react, Du Guyan squeezed in beside them and tilted his head up. Lin Chuan chuckled, amused by the display, and leaned over to return the favor. The three shared a light-hearted, affectionate moment, and Lin Chuan's hands tightened around both of them. "Now that Lingling has absorbed the soul ring, we should get moving," Lin Chuan said when the mood eased. They had already spent half a day there. The Earth Temple awaited. He dug into the soil to retrieve the withered trunk, but the moment he pulled the fragile wood free, it crumbled into fine dust. Lin Chuan frowned. Back where the tree had stood, however, a small green seed lay quietly in the earth. "Of course," he said with relief. He picked up the seed and handed it to Ye Lingling. "This is the seed of the 100,000-year tree of life. Keep it safe. If you ever go to the God Realm, plant it there and use it as a medium to revive the tree." Ye Lingling accepted the seed with solemn gratitude and nodded vigorously. She wouldn't forget the promises made for such a gift. 10 days later, the trio arrived at the Earth Temple. Lin Chuan and Ye Lingling watched Du Guyan disappear into the stone forest and did not follow. "Lingling, we'll return to Shuiyuan City," Lin Chuan said. He spread the wind and thunder wings, wrapped a protective arm around Ye Lingling's slender waist, and they took to the air. The wings thrummed with the sound of thunder and wind. With their help, the soul power cost was manageable, even across the long distance from the northern Tiando Empire to the southernmost tip of the Xingluo Empire. By the time they touched down in Shuiyuan City, night had fallen. Their dramatic descent, riding a storm of wind and thunder, naturally drew attention. Two figures rose to intercept them in midair, flanking them until the newcomers were identified. Relief spread across their faces, and they landed. "Hey, Lin boy, must you make such a ruckus every time?" Du Gubo grumbled, feigning indignation. He was older and didn't care for the sudden alarm. Sorry. I'll be more careful next time," Lin Chuan said quickly. Shui Lanshin waved off the gathered onlookers and then looked him over with a teasing scold. "You little thing, you really know how to give me a scare," she said. "Go back to your room for now." The group moved quickly back into the manor's backyard. Shui Lanshin offered Lin Chuan a cup of tea. He tasted it, brief bitterness giving way to endless sweetness. "You're back sooner than usual. Have Binger and the others already arrived at Sea God Island?" Shui Lanshin asked. Lin Chuan nodded. "They made it safely. The 8 of them are on Sea God Island taking the tests. Binger passed the Sea God 9 trials. If she breaks the 100th level of soul power, she can inherit the Sea God throne, but she'll probably be there for several years." Shui Lanshin beamed, genuinely delighted. She'd once envied Ye Lingling and Du Guyan for their inheritances. Now, Shui Binger was favored as well, so she could finally stop feeling left out. "That's wonderful. Let them train well on the island. Us old folks can still hold out a bit longer." "Dean Shui, you're not old. You're still in your prime," Lin Chuan teased, making her bristle. He then filled them in. Du Guyan had gone back to the Earth Temple to continue his tests. Lin Chuan and Ye Lingling had escorted him there, and the temple's entrance was sealed. No one could enter, so there was nothing to worry about. And what about you two? Are you leaving to continue your examinations? Du Gubo asked. No, Lin Chuan said quickly. Lingling's next test is to raise her soul power level, so she doesn't need to return to the Life Temple now. She'll stay in Shuiwan City. Shui Lanqin relaxed. That's a relief. Lin Chuan smiled, but then added, slightly sheepish. Still, I'll need to practice. There are future crises we must be ready for, and I've got territory matters to handle. He and Ye Lingling were both tired from the journey. We'll rest first, he said, pulling Ye Lingling toward the rooms. As they left, Shui Lanqin muttered under her breath, half annoyed and half amused, that Lin Chuan was a rogue who always managed to get her doing things for him. She grumbled about being tricked, but inwardly she admitted she'd make the same choice all over again. Without Lin Chuan, she would never have become a titled Douluo so quickly, nor would Shui Binger have been acknowledged by the sea god. He'd given them all so much. What he asked in return was only to help with the territory's affairs. Even as a titled Douluo, she knew Lin Chuan's strength far outstripped hers. Accepting that meant allowing him to shoulder greater burdens. For now, though, they would rest and prepare for whatever came next. Chapter 187, Stop Drinking from Today. Good thing I ran fast, otherwise the dean would have insisted I quit. After dashing away, Lin Chuan let out a long sigh of relief. Ye Lingling, held in his arms, covered her face and laughed. Isn't it you who should quit, Brother Chuan? What are you talking about? I was on my way to train. I trust the dean. Those who can should do more. Lin Chuan protested without shame. Ye Lingling only smiled brighter. Being teased like that made even him lose his composure. He pretended to be annoyed, drew her closer, and lowered his head to kiss her. Her cheeks flamed. Ye Lingling's soft hands pressed feebly against his chest, more of a shy gesture than an actual push, but there was no real resistance. When she began to gasp for air, Lin Chuan finally let go. She panted and shot him an embarrassed glare, though the flush on her face made her look impossibly charming. He couldn't help the swell of warmth in his chest. He slipped an arm around her and lifted her up. Ah! She was startled, then looked up into his eyes and trembled. It was obvious she had guessed what he intended. Color rushed to her face and she buried her head against him, making no sound, silently consenting. Seeing that, Lin Chuan stopped hesitating and carried the beautiful girl back into his room. Night fell quietly, and a different kind of sound began to leak from the room. Soft, rhythmic, intimate noises that would have been unmistakable to anyone nearby. Shui Lanqin, tidying up late, paused at the doorway when she heard them. What is that? She muttered, frowning. The sound was close enough that she traced it to the adjacent room. That has to be Xiaochuan's room, and that's Lingling. The murmur cut off. Shui Lanqin's cheeks burned with a mix of annoyance and amusement. Ugh, little perverts. She turned away, slammed her own door, and forced herself to sleep, but in the quiet the sound seemed louder, and sleep would not come easily. Those two are impossible. I hope they don't disturb anyone else. She scolded them under her breath, but didn't knock. Eventually her irritation softened into a tender smile. She drifted off with a faint blush and a small wrinkle between her brows that betrayed the night dreams she'd had. Dawn broke. Lin Chuan stirred and groaned, feeling unusually heavy. Looking down, he found Ye Lingling curled against him, one tear glistening at the corner of her eye. He blinked awake all at once and reached out to brush the tear from her brow. The movement made her tremble. Her lashes fluttered, but she pretended to still be asleep, perhaps too shy to meet his gaze. Those days after were spent almost entirely together. After tasting intimacy, they found it hard to part. But Lin Chuan was not blind to the effect it was having on him. Sitting in front of the bronze mirror a few mornings later, he studied his own face. He looked haggard. I've been ruined by drinking and indulgence, he muttered to his reflection. I'm quitting alcohol today. He allowed himself a rueful smile. The past few days had been wild. He had hardly left the room. Still, he thought of the time Ye Lingling had tried to slip away and felt a small, private triumph. After a long rest, it was time to get serious again. He pushed open the door just as Shui Lanqin appeared in the hallway. She stared at him for a long beat, then rolled her eyes so obviously he winced. You finally came out of your room. Uh. Lin Chuan scratched his head and offered a sheepish smile when she showed dark circles under her eyes. She didn't press him further, and soon he was gone. After a quick meal, he set off for the nearby mountains to train. The mountains were quiet, with few soul beasts around, a perfect place to practice without interruption. Lin Chuan inhaled, centered himself, and after a short meditation, he opened his eyes. The silver moon spear appeared in his hand as if it had always been there. He moved with the spear, and the air around it sang. The spear cut through space with a rushing whistle. Water and flame coiled along its shaft, distorting the air. His motions accelerated into a blur, phantoms of spear shadows spawning in waves, the field full of images until it was impossible to tell which was real, and perhaps they all were. Kill, he thought, and thrust. The tip of the spear erupted in a concentrated torrent of flame and water that crackled as it met the air. Boom! A roaring impact followed. Meteors of light trailed the spear's path, lingering as the rotating force condensed into a flaming dragon that shot forward. Compared with the past, the fire dragon was fiercer, more focused. Anything it passed through left a devastated wake. Go! The dragon struck a 10-foot boulder and shattered it into powder, barely diminished as it continued. A cavernous tunnel yawned in front of him where the beast had carved through the rock. Lin Chuan smiled. The flame mystery had improved. The power born from the fusion of water and fire had grown more concentrated and purer. That increase in raw destructive force explained why he had managed to block the trident of the sea god at Sea God Mountain before. He remembered that battle with a faint chill. The sea god's golden 13 halberds had been terrifying. Even though an adversary had borrowed the sea god's power at the time, the technique's force was undeniable. Lin Chuan hadn't been defeated, but he had been pushed and injured. Ultimately, his hard power had been lacking. If his soul power level had been higher, if he had been 99 back then, things might have been very different. At present, he commanded 4 mysteries: wind, water, fire, and life. Wind and fire had reached the 2nd level. Water and life were still 1st level. The life mystery at 1st level was no slouch, roughly comparable to a 2nd-level fire mystery, but the imbalance worried him. Now that fire had advanced, the combined water-fire moves had become stronger, but the water mystery lagged behind. A mismatch that large could be dangerous if left unchecked. The two forces might not synchronize properly. Clear path, he thought. Raise the water mystery to 2nd level as soon as possible. Then, if he could attempt to fuse the wind mystery into it, perhaps a new power would emerge. And he still needed a 9th soul ring. A lot to do, but nothing that had to be rushed this instant. Even against the sea god's overwhelming terrain advantage, Lin Chuan felt confident. As long as he didn't want to die, no one could kill him. He sat on a flat stone, the silver moon spear across his knees, and began to prepare. The area was empty. The nearby beasts had fled the violent energy. He closed his eyes and drew the 2 pill beads he'd been saving. A blue bead and a red bead floated up inside a small blue-patterned tripod that expanded from his brow. With a wave of his hand, he claimed the blue bead into his palm and was about to begin when something unexpected happened. An accident that took him completely by surprise. Chapter 188, Water Dragon King Awakens. The small blue bead in his hand flared brilliantly. The light washed over Lin Chuan, making him frown. What's happening? When the radiance dimmed, a shape hung in the air before him. It was translucent, rhymed in blue, and pulsed with draconic power. The shadow swelled, and within a few breaths it had doubled in size, resolving into the form of a great blue dragon. Then, abruptly, the dragon's eyes opened. Human! A low, resonant hum rolled from the apparition, and a cold like a tide crashed outward. Frost stitched into the air, and thin flakes of snow began to swirl. The temperature plunged. The world around them started to chill and condense. Lin Chuan's eyes flashed. A fierce flame sprang to life along his skin, consuming the cold and holding it back. The dragon's pupils narrowed in disbelief. Fire element in a human? It hissed. Impossible. How can a mere human, one who has not ascended to godhood, wield the element of fire? The ice power intensified, yet the flames on Lin Chuan did not waver. Who are you? The dragon demanded. Lin Chuan listened to the roar, then relaxed. He looked at the dragon soul hovering before him with genuine surprise. "I didn't expect you to wake," he said quietly. "You know me?" the dragon asked. "Of course," Lin Chuan replied without hesitation. "You're the Water Dragon King." When Lin Chuan named him, the blue draconic phantom's expression deepened. Then, spotting the mark on Lin Chuan's forehead, realization dawned. "So you are a divine examiner, but even so, you shouldn't know my true identity." "Consider it a special channel," Lin Chuan answered with a shrug. Then his curiosity surfaced. "When I took your life bead and the Fire Dragon Kings from the Ice and Fire Yin-Yang eyes, you didn't appear. Why now, after all this time, have you awakened?" "It is because of you," the Water Dragon King said. "Because of me," Lin Chuan blinked. "How?" "You went to a place saturated with life energy," the dragon explained. "The life force you absorbed resonated with ours and stirred me. I tried to manifest then, but I was imprisoned by the green-veined tripod and could not break free or sense the outside. Only now, freed, could I fully wake." Lin Chuan's face fell as he realized the implication. The life beads of the two Dragon Kings had been together in the green-veined tripod, and he had placed them into the Sea of Spirit, which aided his own comprehension of the mystery of life. The dragon's sudden revival had been an unintended consequence. "So you wake because of my help," he said coolly. "And yet you immediately attack. Are all dragons so ungrateful? You cannot insult the dragon race." The Water Dragon King's breath expanded, and his voice thundered like a storm. "Do not waste your strength. In your present state, you cannot harm me." He lowered his assault then, plainly angry. "If I had not been killed, even at 1/10 my former strength, I could have crushed you. Even at half my peak, I would have stopped you." Lin Chuan spread his hands and met the dragon's fury with composure. "Who's to blame? I didn't kill you. I acted in kindness. You ignored that kindness and were destroyed by your own choices." The dragon bristled, nearly boiling over with rage, but could not touch the human. Lin Chuan, frowning, thought beyond the immediate confrontation. He had intended to use the Water Dragon King's life elixir to accelerate his understanding of the water mystery. He hadn't expected the dragon soul to awaken. If the Water Dragon King had returned, then the Fire Dragon King likely had as well. It would be safer to return both to the Qingwending and suppress them for the time being. "I'll take you back to the Qingwending for now," Lin Chuan decided. "Wait, human!" The Water Dragon King suddenly interrupted, its tone urgent. Lin Chuan paused. "I owe you an apology. I acted rashly." The dragon retracted its power and inclined its head. Lin Chuan's suspicion spiked, but he scowled. "Don't play games. Say what you want." The Water Dragon King fell into silence, then spoke more quietly. "Since you know my identity, you must know of the upheaval that once occurred in the God realm." Lin Chuan bristled with interest. "I know something of it." "Then listen. I will tell you in detail, and afterward we can return to our previous discussion." "Proceed," Lin Chuan said, curiosity tempered by caution. The dragon's voice swelled with memory. "In the far past, the Dragon Clan ruled the God realm. My father, Dragon God, stood as Lord of the God realm and King of all dragons. He was the first among us to ascend to godhood. He forged the realm of divine dragons and infused his bloodline with attribute power to elevate the finest of our kind. Under him, I became the Water Dragon King. Our dragon god was magnanimous. He allowed humans and beasts to ascend to godhood. Under his rule, the dragon realm prospered. Then, without warning, turmoil broke out in the divine world. Our divine beasts were routed. 9 dragon kings fell. Only 2 remained. I perished in that battle." Lin Chuan listened, the account matching the fragments he already held in his memory. "What caused the turmoil? What happened after?" he asked. The Water Dragon King's voice went cold. Anger flared in his eyes and was immediately stilled. "When I died, my father still lived. I do not know what happened afterward. As for the cause of the catastrophe in the dragon realm, that is not something you should know." Lin Chuan couldn't help a short, mirthless laugh. Much of the history had been sealed or distorted. In his mind, he filled in the gaps: betrayal among dragon lords, the dragon god's descent into madness, the cataclysm that followed, but he kept those thoughts to himself. "Enough history," he said, cutting back to the present. "What exactly do you want?" The dragon did not conceal his proposal. "I wish to become your soul ring. Will you accept me?" Lin Chuan's eyes widened. After so much setup, This was the request? He stared, incredulous. Why should I? I am dying, the Water Dragon King said simply. Though I was once a god king, my soul power has ebbed over the long years. Left unfilled, it will dissipate completely within, at most, tens of thousands of years. If I do not take refuge in the Sea of Spirit as a soul ring, I will be lost. He looked at Lin Chuan with sorrow that was almost palpable. And there is another reason. If I bind myself to a being with the potential to ascend to godhood, if you become a god, then I can be resurrected or even regain godhood through you. The offer was blunt, a ride to immortality in exchange for service. Lin Chuan's lips curled. It sounded similar to other desperate bargains he had seen, beasts hitching onto mortals to reach the gods because the path to their own ascension had been blocked. You say it will help me, Lin Chuan said coolly, but what does it do for me? What's in it for me? The Water Dragon King blinked. Pride stung him at being refused by a mere human. I can be your soul ring for 1,000,000 years. With my power, even diminished, I will bolster your chances of becoming a god. Lin Chuan remained unmoved. I have confidence in my own path to godhood. When the dragon faltered, Lin Chuan added, Besides, I've already taken your soul bone. That limits what you can do on your own. For a moment, the Water Dragon King was speechless. Then, slowly, with a measured tone, he asked, How would you have me serve you? Lin Chuan's expression softened into something like a bargain. I will take you to the god realm, but in return, you must serve me for 1,000 years. After that, we are even. The dragon's pupils contracted. He wanted to refuse, but Lin Chuan's calm, unblinking gaze gave him pause. He thought. 10, 20 heartbeats passed. At last, the Water Dragon King lifted his head. I accept. Be clear, the 1,000 years are god realm years, Lin Chuan warned. For a god, 1,000 years is but a blink, the dragon conceded. I have one condition. I will not harm beasts, and you must bring the Fire Dragon King with you. That's acceptable, if the Fire Dragon King consents, Lin Chuan replied. Let me try, the Water Dragon King began, then trailed off as if steeling himself. The dragon soul pulsed, gathering the faint threads of its will, preparing to seek out its counterpart and plead their case. Chapter 189. Two Dragon Kings. You don't want to disappear, do you? Lin Chuan didn't hesitate. He reached into the blue-patterned cauldron and drew out another pill bead. As before, a colossal red dragon shimmered into being with a burst of red light. Human. A low, thunderous roar filled the air, and a lance of scorching flame shot from the dragon's eyes, engulfing Lin Chuan instantly. Sister Huo, stop! The Water Dragon King snapped. Lin Chuan didn't even try to dodge. The Water Dragon King's dragon soul moved first, taking the full brunt of the flames to shield him. The Fire Dragon King hovered, puzzled. Xiao Shui, why did you stop me? Listen first, the Water Dragon King said flatly as she floated beside the Fire Dragon King. I've made a pact with this human. I'll take the form of his soul ring and serve him for 1,000 years. When he becomes a god, he will bring me back. No, what right does an ordinary human have to make such a demand, Xiao Shui? The Fire Dragon King's voice was cold and indignant. Even in spirit form, the old pride of the Dragon Clan remained. Why would I accept anything like that? The Water Dragon King's expression stayed composed. Our consciousness is already fragmented. Over countless years we will fade. It won't take more than tens of thousands of years for us to dissipate completely. This is our last chance. Sister Huo, do you want to vanish between heaven and earth? The Water Dragon King pressed. Of course I don't, the Fire Dragon King snorted. Who wouldn't cling to life? If they simply disappeared, he didn't know what would become of the Dragon God, the Dragon Clan, or the God Realm itself. The thought of being annihilated stirred fierce defiance. There's no time to hesitate, the Water Dragon King urged. These humans are our best option. The price is only 1,000 years. Seeing the Fire Dragon King flicker with doubt, the Water Dragon King pushed the advantage. The Fire Dragon King went silent, but his expression showed uncertainty. Then, suddenly curious, he asked, Why are you so certain this human can become a god? The Water Dragon King didn't answer directly. She turned her attention back to Lin Chuan. Lin Chuan gave a small chuckle, and then, with a sudden surge, a torrent of heat flared from him. The blaze matched, even surpassed, the earlier flames the Fire Dragon King had produced. Its intensity and technique left the Fire Dragon King's eyes going wide. This human, who hadn't even become a god, possessed an understanding of the fire element that rivaled a Dragon King's. If the Fire Dragon King had still been whole in his prime, the difference would have been clear, but in his current weakened spirit form, he could not match it. His contempt shifted to a hard, newfound respect. No wonder Xiao Shui insisted, the Fire Dragon King murmured. This human may actually be worthy of godhood. He glared at Lin Chuan. Human, why should I believe your promise? Lin Chuan smiled, shrugging. Trust is mutual. You can't force belief. I don't fully trust you either. There was meaning behind the words. In Douluo Continent's history, bodies and thrones could be seized, spirits could be hidden, and later used to retake power. Past examples had shown how even powerful beings could be manipulated. Even if the Water and Fire Dragon Kings couldn't seize Lin Chuan now, nothing guaranteed such a thing could never happen. The Fire Dragon King sneered. Then, swear it in the name of the Dragon God. At the mention of the Dragon God's name, the Fire Dragon King's anger flared. You're blaspheming, Lin Chuan shrugged. Think of it as insurance. An oath won't magically bind you, but a promise is something to appeal to. If you keep it, everyone's fine. The Water Dragon King spoke quietly, deciding the path. Very well, I promise. The Fire Dragon King exploded at the admission, flames whirling in the void. The Water Dragon King remained calm. Sister Huo, this could be our last chance. The Dragon Clan and other beasts need us back. The Fire Dragon King hesitated, then raised her head. I can agree, but he must swear as well. Lin Chuan's smile turned amused. You're the ones asking favors. It's not for you to bargain. Even without a soul ring, I could become a god. You, the Fire Dragon King hissed. The Water Dragon King asked for Lin Chuan's name. Lin Chuan, he answered. I, the Water Dragon King, she intoned, her voice deep and resounding, swear in the name of the Dragon God and the Dragon Clan that today I will become Lin Chuan's soul ring. I will be sacrificed into his soul ring so that when he becomes a god, he may resurrect me. I will serve him for 1,000 years and never betray him within that span. If I violate this oath, my soul will be destroyed. The dragon roar rolled across the forest like an earthquake. Lin Chuan felt the space itself tremble. Your turn, he said. The Fire Dragon King's gaze drilled into him. Human, I expect you to keep your promise, or I will pursue you even to death. I, the Fire Dragon King, she vowed, swear in the name of the Dragon God and the Dragon Clan that today I will become Lin Chuan's soul ring. I will be sacrificed into his soul ring, and when he becomes a god, be resurrected by him. I will serve him for 1,000 years and never betray him within that time. If I break this oath, my soul will be destroyed. At those words, Lin Chuan's smile widened. Perfect. Don't worry. I won't break my promise. I will bring you back when I reach the God realm. As for now, he added with a wry look, Fire Dragon King, you'll just have to put up with feeling insulted a little longer. Before the Fire Dragon King could react, Lin Chuan scooped the red pill into his palm and tossed it into the blue-patterned cauldron. With a thought, the cauldron shrank and slipped into the center of his eyebrows, and the Water Dragon King's essence flowed into it. The Fire Dragon King bristled with irritation. Lin Chuan preferred the Water Dragon King as his soul ring. He didn't want a perpetually quarrelsome Fire Dragon King under his skin to argue with him every day. Better to start with the one who'd given fewer heartburns. Let's begin, the Water Dragon King said, nodding. I can give you a 1,000,000-year soul ring. Do you want any particular soul skills? Can it be customized? Lin Chuan asked, surprised. Don't underestimate a god king, the Water Dragon King replied with quiet pride. Even if I'm not what I once was, I can convert the abilities I mastered into soul skills. Lin Chuan shook his head. I don't need soul skills. The Water Dragon King blinked, clearly not expecting that answer. No soul skills? No. I'd rather use it to accelerate my understanding of the water element, Lin Chuan said. His training path favored mastering the principles of power and developing his own techniques, not accumulating flashy, ready-made skills. If you inherit my divine status, you would gain all my understanding of the water element, she explained. But this world suppresses beasts. Beings cannot become gods here. You can't inherit my divine throne. So there's no way? Lin Chuan asked, disappointed. That's not entirely true, she said. You can't receive my divine position, but I can imprint my greatest magical skill into the soul ring. That skill contains my understanding of the water element. Whether you gain anything from it depends on you. Lin Chuan considered. The Water Dragon King added, the skill is extremely powerful. A million-year soul ring can hold only a single such skill. That's fine, Lin Chuan replied without hesitation. He had no interest in a shelf of ornate soul skills. He wanted the insight, something to help him comprehend the element faster and apply it in his own way. He thought of how gods in the god realm could inherit a throne, and with it the accumulated insights of generations, how Tang San in those old tales had risen by using such advantages. Passing on a throne and its contained understanding allowed someone to advance quickly. Still, spiritual cultivation was ultimately personal. Lin Chuan would borrow the strengths in others' understandings, but he would never simply follow another's path wholesale. I won't accept it all, he said. I'll learn from it. Very well, the Water Dragon King agreed. But there's one more thing. You should know I favor the ice aspect of the water element. My specialty is ice. Lin Chuan nodded. Understood. Let's start. The Water Dragon King prepared to imbue the soul ring. Take a day off. My eyes are swollen and aching from a cold. It's hard to keep them open, so I'm taking the day off. I'm really sorry. Chapter 190, Breakthrough, Level 96. Come on. Lin Chuan nodded. In the next instant, the Water Dragon King's dragon soul shot back into its original danju. A brilliant stream of light flew toward Lin Chuan's forehead. It pierced the skin and entered his sea of spirit. A cold blue halo wrapped around him as a fierce surge of spiritual energy poured in, turning into thick, chilling fog that seeped through his body. A new soul ring silently formed behind him. Ice crystals bloomed across Lin Chuan's skin. The cold was so intense that it froze the surrounding air into a field of snow and ice. He sat cross-legged and let the cold wash over him, but felt no pain. He calmed his mind, guiding and refining the incoming energy. You meditate earnestly. Result, slight increase to physical strength, major increase to soul power, improved proficiency in Tianshui meditation, increased mastery of the guidance technique, ninefold chaotic source. Pop. A soft crack sounded in Lin Chuan's ear. He had broken through the level 90 bottleneck. His body improved steadily as the cold blue energy raced through his meridians, muscles, blood, and bones. The surge was far greater than the power he'd once gained from the dark demon evil god tiger. What a terrifying human. Inside Lin Chuan's spirit sea, the Water Dragon King watched anxiously and, despite being diminished to only a tenth of its former strength, felt reassured. Even at that fraction, its power was immense to a soul master. It had given everything it could. The process had drained it. But Lin Chuan's body endured without a wrinkle. The Water Dragon King's hope swelled. If Lin Chuan grew stronger, his chance of ascending to godhood and thereby reviving the Water Dragon King and the Fire Dragon King would increase. Renewed in purpose, the Dragon King continued the sacrificial fusion, then, exhausted, fell silent to recover. The biting wind persisted. Ice and snow swallowed the forests and peaks. Time passed. Then, crack! A clear, breaking sound echoed, and a figure stepped out of the ice. The man's proportions were perfect, well-defined muscles, flawless from any angle, jade skin gleaming faintly in the cold light. A pulse of soul power rolled outward from him, and the surrounding ice crystals vanished. A pure, empty sanctum of air opened in the snow. Lin Chuan flexed, feeling a long-missed power surge through him. As he moved, a ring of soul energy glowed beneath his feet. Soul rings, so many of them, hung there, each shining brilliantly. Is this a million-year soul ring? He wondered. The ring before him was a stunning blend of gold and blue, its chill unfathomable. Dark golden filigree ran across it like veins, exquisitely beautiful. Water Dragon Break? Is this the soul skill the Water Dragon King mentioned? How strong is it? Lin Chuan's curiosity flickered. He didn't care much about power for its own sake, but he could never resist discovering a new technique. You'll see when you use it, the Water Dragon King said, tired but relieved, its voice in Lin Chuan's mind. Lin Chuan inclined his head and replied silently, Thank you. I'll keep my promise. I'll bring you and the Fire Dragon King back when I reach the God realm. Good. I'm going to rest now, the Dragon King answered. The fusion had taken a tremendous toll. Its spirit had been shaken and needed sleep to recover. Lin Chuan fell silent and absorbed the changes. Beyond the bodily improvements, his soul power had surged spectacularly, from level 90 to the peak of level 96, only one step from 97. The Water Dragon King had no more to give, otherwise he might have pushed further. This multifold increase in soul power transformed Lin Chuan's strength. If he fought Poseidon Duobo Saishi now, even with the might of the Poseidon Temple behind him, Lin Chuan believed he could stand his ground, perhaps even win. He hadn't expected that visiting the Life Temple would not only grant him the mystery of life, but also produce such an extraordinary boon. He had once debated whether to absorb a god-bestowed soul ring or seek a million-year soul beast. That question was now settled. The million-year soul ring given by the Water Dragon King was more than enough. A private status screen surfaced in his mind. Only he could see it. Name, soul power, level 96. Blessing, heaven rewards hard work. Blessing from the will of Blue Star, effort will be rewarded. Skills, Tianshui Meditation Elv 8, Guidance Technique, Ninefold Chaotic Source, for 4. Skill Proficiency, Archery, Harmony between man and nature. Gun Skill, Harmony between man and nature. Sword Skill, Harmony between man and nature. Boxing Skill, Subtle, Body Skill, Harmony between man and nature. Miscellaneous Studies, Alchemy, Elv 4, Weapon Refining. Combat Skills, Seeing and Hearing Domineering, Elv 6. Thunder Knife, Elv 4. Body Technique, Flowing Light, 4. Mastery of Water and Fire Series, Soul Skills. First Soul Skill, Exploding Arrow Elv, Ice Arrow Elv, Wind Arrow Elv, Thunder Arrow Elv, Golden Arrow Elv 5. Sixth Soul Skill, Soul Destroying Arrow Elv 5. Seventh, Martial Soul Avatar. Eighth, Desperate Situation of Reincarnation, Protection by the Evil God. Ninth, Water Dragon Break of Enlightenments, Mystery of Life, Elv 1. Mystery of Water of All Things, Elv 1. Mystery of Fire of All Things, Elv 2. Mystery of Wind of All Things, Elv 2. His capabilities had shifted as if the world had been turned over. Excluding the Silver Dragon King, Lin Chuan was now arguably the strongest person on the mainland. The Silver Dragon King, however, lay gravely injured, slightly less drained than the Water and Fire Dragon Kings, but nowhere near god level. Its combat effectiveness had plummeted and could only match a third-level god at best. Lin Chuan had never fought a true god, so he couldn't judge how he stood against them, but with his wind and thunder wings and second-level enlightenment in the mystery of wind, escape was no problem. Let's return to the manor. Lingling and the others must be worried, he decided. He didn't know how many days had passed during the absorption, but it felt long. He waved his hand. The surrounding ice and snow melted away. He rose smoothly into the sky, but this time he didn't rely on his wind and thunder wings or the mysterious power of wind. He simply used his massive soul power to fly. Unlike ordinary titled Douluo, his soul power seemed inexhaustible. The cost of flight was less than his recovery rate. With a thought, he pushed himself forward and vanished like a phantom. Try your best. Lin Chuan smiled, and Feng Lei, his companion, appeared behind him. A breeze wrapped around his body. The wind and thunder wings flared. Hurricane winds and lightning crackled, and he streaked through the air as a blue-white streak, far faster than before. In just 2 breaths, he was above Snowfield City. This speed is amazing. Lin Chuan laughed, elated. He retracted his wind and thunder wings and dove straight into his courtyard. Because he hadn't hidden his return, the manor's occupants immediately sensed his arrival, and several auras approached quickly. Brother Chuan, you're finally back. Where have you been for the past few days? Yi Lingling was the first to arrive. Seeing the worry still etched on her face, Lin Chuan felt a swell of tenderness. He reached out, pulled her close, and kissed her, hungry for the few days they'd been apart. After a short, intimate pause, they separated. Lingling's cheeks were flushed, her eyes bright, and she breathed a little faster than normal. It's all right, as long as you're back safe, she whispered. Before they could get any more comfortable, Dugubo and Shuilanshin arrived. Lin boy, where have you been? Dugubo asked bluntly. Lin Chuan tightened his hold on Lingling to keep her close, then turned to face them with a smile. Just a small breakthrough, he said. A small breakthrough? Dugubo and Shuilanshin cried in unison. When Shuilanshin's eyes cleared, she asked, Xiaochuan, have you become a titled Douluo? Lin Chuan nodded, and to answer, unleashed a terrifying pulse of soul power. Dugubo and Shuilanshin tensed. The pressure rolled over them and left an instinctive dread. Their throats worked. Horror and astonishment showed on their faces. This soul power, it's at least level 96, one of them breathed. Boy Lin, what did you do these past days? Douluo demanded. In just a few days, Lin Chuan hadn't merely become a titled Douluo. He'd leapt beyond ordinary titled Douluo into super Douluo territory. The sheer amount of power was terrifying. Douluo had to swallow his pride. Whatever Lin Chuan had found, it was absurdly powerful. When I happened upon the right soul ring, the breakthrough came naturally, Lin Chuan explained casually. Douluo and Shui Longxin had no words. What kind of soul ring could take someone from level 90 to 96 in one leap? It was almost unbelievable, yet it had happened to Lin Chuan, and thus seemed perfectly plausible. You're a monster, Douluo finally said, astonishment and pride mingling in his tone. Behind his words was relief. He'd made a wise choice in this match. If there was anyone on the Douluo Continent better than Lin Chuan, he didn't want to bet on it. Having this son-in-law was fortune indeed. He resolved then that he would not let Ye family's opportunities fall behind. When Yanyan returned, he would push her and Lin Chuan's relationship forward. Douluo's eyes gleamed with a new decision. Chapter 191, Passing the Sixth Test. Douluo and Shui Longxin left quickly. Once they learned that Lin Chuan had burst through to title Douluo and his soul power had rocketed to level 96 in one sweep, their worries about future troubles eased. Lin Chuan's domain was vast, and the force he had raised numbered in the tens of thousands. Even if most were ordinary people, massed together they were no longer to be underestimated. Shuiyuan City also had its own squad of soul masters. Holding the title of Zhenbei King carried real weight. With plentiful resources behind them, Tianshui Academy had become a talent source for Shuiyuan City, and between the Shui and Ye families, the Soul Master team was slowly taking shape. Although the new power could not yet rival the three upper sects or the Wuhan Hall, its high-end combat capability was already significant. The three titled Douluos who stood with Lin Chuan put them ahead of the Seven Treasures Glazed sect and the Blue Lightning Tyrannosaurus family. Haoqin sect had many titled Douluos, but most were ordinary. There was only one super Douluo, Sect Master Tang Xiao. In terms of hard power, Lin Chuan's side was stronger. As the fief of a king under the Tiando Empire, Shuiyuan City also had imperial protection and little to fear from other factions. Shui Longxin let out a long, relieved breath. Finally, she could relax. Left alone, Lin Chuan let a small smile creep across his face. He hooked Ye Lingling around the waist, drew her close, and looked down at the beauty in his arms with a mischievous grin. I haven't seen you for a few days, Lingling. I missed you. Ye Lingling didn't know exactly what to make of his tone. Her cheeks flushed a soft pink, her neck warming in color, and she looked at him with the shy, breathy expression of a young woman. She lightly tapped his chest with a small fist and murmured coquettishly, "It's still daytime." "So what? This is my home. Who's going to stop me?" Lin Chuan snorted and pushed open the door with his heel. He eased Ye Lingling onto the couch and lowered his head. Her long lashes fluttered. She warned him in a hushed voice, "Don't make too much noise." "Don't worry, I'm a professional," he teased, smiling. The next morning, Lin Chuan woke refreshed. The bed beside him was empty, but the room still smelled faintly of her. The door opened, and Ye Lingling came in carrying a tray. "Brother Chuan, you're awake. Come and eat." "You're so virtuous, Lingling. I'm blessed to have you." He hugged her and kissed her lips lightly. Even though they had long since been honest with each other, Ye Lingling still flushed and pushed him away gently. "Let's eat first." He scratched her nose playfully. "All right, but tonight we'll continue this." After a quick wash, they sat down to the meal Ye Lingling had prepared. It tasted wonderful. Watching him enjoy it made her beam. Today she seemed different. She wore a simple dress covering her arms and calves, and her once flowing blue hair was tied up. The girl's childish airs had faded somewhat, a quiet, mature feminine charm emerging. After they finished, Lin Chuan began clearing the dishes. "Brother Chuan, I'm going to practice," Ye Lingling said as she rose. "Wait." He called after her. "Maybe I can help." She turned puzzled. "Huh? Do you mean, did you take another powerful elixir? Release your martial soul first." Ye Lingling trusted him and complied. She slowly pushed out her soul power, A life spirit manifested in her palms. Lin Chuan touched his forehead lightly, and the blue-veined tripod, the Qingwen Ding, floated out and resumed its normal size on the table. She peered at the tripod with curiosity. "What is that?" "Put the life spirit pill in," Lin Chuan said quietly. Ye Lingling blinked but did as he asked, placing the small life spirit core into the Qingwen Ding without question. Lin Chuan then took a red pill, the Fire Dragon King's life pill, and held it in his palm. The pill shimmered, and a voice, low and amused, issued from it. "Human, why did you let me out again?" "Shut up. No time for talk. Stay put," Lin Chuan snapped, setting the red pill aside in the cauldron. The pill snorted, offended but silent. Lin Chuan inhaled slowly, opened his mouth, and expelled a thin thread of golden flame. The Qingwen Ding trembled. Its mysterious runes flared silver, and heavenly power surged, filling the room. Countless silver motes condensed and streamed into the cauldron, into the life spirit pill, carving patterns across it that matched those on the Qingwen Ding. The Fire Dragon King roused, sensing the change. Its dragon soul appeared and bristled at the sight. "Heaven and earth power? Are you trying to forcibly inject the power of heaven and earth into a martial soul? Aren't you afraid it'll blow up her soul?" Lin Chuan ignored the protests and focused. Yi Lingling, though unsure, watched him with unwavering faith. "I believe in you, Brother Chuan," she said. The Fire Dragon King spat and muttered that Lin Chuan was crazy, but the spectacle had it riveted. No one outside could see what was happening. The strange disturbances were confined to the house. Lin Chuan kept working. The Qingwen Ding's blue patterns glowed again and again. Each time, a greater tide of heaven and earth vitality poured into the life spirit pill. He repeated the process 3 times. About 3 hours later, the silver light dimmed and the surging force of heaven and earth dissipated. Lin Chuan snuffed out the golden flame, and the now refined life spirit slowly floated up and settled into Ye Lingling's palm. "You actually succeeded?" The Fire Dragon King's voice was incredulous. "Brother Chuan, what does this do?" Ye Lingling asked, eyes wide as a newly empowered resonance stirred within the life spirit. "Don't talk," Lin Chuan urged. "Refine this soul power with everything you've got." Without hesitation, she sat cross-legged, closed her eyes, and channeled her power into assimilating the enhanced life spirit. Lin Chuan stood by in silence, watching her aura climb. It warmed him to see that his method worked on another's martial soul. Unfortunately, his technique only worked for weapon-type martial souls, not beast-type, so Duguyan and Shui Binger could not benefit. The Fire Dragon King's curiosity overcame its skepticism. "Human, what is your method? How can you call down the power of heaven and earth and inject it into a martial soul without causing it to explode and even grant such a huge feedback?" Lin Chuan gave it a cold look. "That's not for you to know. Stay put." He dropped the Fire Dragon King's pill back into the Qingwen Ding and sealed it. As the hours passed, Ye Lingling's soul power rose rapidly, 77, 78, finally 80. At the same moment, a familiar voice echoed in Lin Chuan's mind. "Protect the inheritor of the life god position. Assessment passed. Reward, soul power +1 level. Additional reward, soul power +1 level." Vast vitality of heaven and earth surged and was drawn into Lin Chuan's body. "Here it comes," he thought, his eyes lighting up. He converted the influx into his own soul power with ease. The increase compounded the gains he had recently made, absorbing the Water Dragon King's soul ring, triggering a terrifying fluctuation of power. Outside the door, Dugubo had come to stand guard. He froze at the pressure emanating from inside and muttered under his breath, "It's getting stronger again. What is that little monster doing?" He did not enter. His role was to protect the perimeter, and even he felt the oppressive force pressing outward. An hour later, Lin Chuan opened his eyes first. "Level 98, he said softly. "One more test and I can break through to level 100. He felt a strange mix of exhilaration and calm. There had been nothing quite like this speed of advancement. In only 2 or 3 years, he had absorbed several exceptional soul rings and achieved a qualitative leap. To approach level 100 before the end of the divine tests was virtually unprecedented. Another hour later, Ye Lingling's aura settled, and her eyelids fluttered open. She saw Lin Chuan's faint smile and beamed. "Brother Chuan, my soul power reached level 80. Is it because of that cauldron?" He nodded. "Yes, but don't stop. Absorb your soul ring completely at once. Yes, she answered, resolute. She reached for the God-given soul ring she had not yet absorbed, ready to take the next step. Chapter 192. Look, anxious again. Yilingling closed her eyes, holding the God-given soul ring in her palm. Waves of soul energy fluctuations rose and fell around her again, stronger this time than before. Outside the door, Dugubo's face changed. The earlier surging energy had calmed. Why was it flaring up once more? He hesitated, unwilling to barge in and disturb them. Time crept by minute after minute. The tremors lingered for a long while, then at last ebbed away 3 days later. Is it finally over? Dugubo opened his eyes, a light of relief flashing across his face. He pushed open the door to see Lin Chuan and Yilingling step out slowly. Boy Lin, did you break through again? Dugubo asked eagerly. Lin Chuan grinned and didn't hide anything. I passed another trial and got a reward. It made a bit of a racket. Thank you, Senior Dugu, for guarding the law for us. What level is your soul power now? Dugubo pressed. 98, Lin Chuan said straightforwardly. Dugubo sucked in a breath. How many days had it been? An increase to the 9th soul ring on a trip alone was already remarkable, but jumping up to 98 now, his pace of advancement was stupefying. He'd watched Lin Chuan get stronger before, but this was outrageous even by those standards. And what about Lingling? Dugubo asked, remembering he had felt another breath earlier. Lingling completed her test too, Lin Chuan replied. She absorbed a soul ring, and she's now a Contra. Silence settled over Dugubo. His whole body felt a bit numb. Today's youngsters were terrifying. Or perhaps this was simply how it went after taking the gods' tests, an accelerated rise. If that were true, his granddaughter would not be far behind, perhaps soaring to Soul Saint or even Contra herself by the next time they met. Thinking that made him feel a little better. Huh, you little monsters are something else, he muttered, then chuckled. Well, you're both fine. I'll go, don't want to hear any more shocking updates. At my age, my heart can't take it. With that, Dugubo turned and left. Lin Chuan smiled as Dugubo disappeared. At that moment, the mark on Yilingling's brow flashed, and a soft, sweet voice sounded in her mind. 6th of 9 life trials completed. Soul power successfully reached level 80. Reward: soul power increased by 2 levels. All soul rings cultivation years improved by 10,000 years. Life affinity increased by 20%. Current overall progress, 70%. Yilingling felt her soul power surge again. She had started at 77. After 3 rounds of soul refining, she hit 80, then later absorbed the God-given soul ring, a 100,000-year soul ring, which pushed her to 84. Now, with the assessment reward, her level settled at 86. In just a few days, her soul power had jumped almost 10 levels. 86, Yilingling breathed. That's not far from a titled Douluo. The idea made her eyes shine. The Jushin Begonia Ye family had never had a titled Douluo-level soul master. Could she be the first? Lingling, what's the 7th trial? Lin Chuan asked, glancing at her mark. His own test status hadn't changed. Yilingling closed her eyes and submerged her consciousness to read the trial. When she opened her eyes again, her expression was oddly complicated. What's wrong? Lin Chuan noticed the change. The 7th test. It requires me to find the co-master of the soul beasts, resolve the conflict between humans and soul beasts, and solve the problem of the soul beasts' survival. Lin Chuan froze. The previous trials had been challenging but manageable. This one was different. Finding a soul beast co-master was already near impossible. Who even knew who that was? And resolving the centuries-old conflict between humans and soul beasts, that was another matter entirely. He thought of how soul masters needed soul rings to break through to higher levels, hunting soul beasts for rings, refining soul bones for extra skills and physical strengthening, even using their flesh for cultivation boosts. The beasts were treasure troves. Law and conscience often lost out to profit. Even with regulations in place, people still hunted wild animals and spirit beasts. The imbalance was deep-rooted, and the antagonism nearly irreconcilable. This is troublesome, Lin Chuan said, massaging his temple. The 7th trial posed a massive problem, one the goddess of life was capable of designing, given her impartiality during the god realm upheaval. Lin Chuan's role was to assist Yilingling in the trial, so he couldn't shy away from it. Besides, even without the test, he wouldn't stand aside. Brother Chuan, What should we do? Ye Lingling asked helplessly. She didn't even know where to start looking for a soul beast co-master. Don't worry, Lin Chuan said. I know who the soul beast co-master is, but resolving the human soul beast conflict and ensuring their survival, that will be a long, difficult task. Suddenly, an idea hit him. Lin Chuan closed his eyes and plunged his consciousness into the spirit sea. Water Dragon King, are you there? In the spirit sea, the soul of the Water Dragon King lay dormant in a corner. Lin Chuan gently poured emerald life force into the dragon's soul, the hidden power of life his own training allowed him to use. Slowly, the blue orb in front of him stirred. Water Dragon King? Lin Chuan called again, this time getting a response. A tired voice answered, What brings you to wake me? I need to trouble you with something urgent. Can you stay awake for a while? I can manage a few hours, the Water Dragon King said. Speak quickly. Lin Chuan didn't mince words. I need to know how soul beasts and humans used to cultivate before the turmoil in the god realm. It might be relevant to a god test. The Water Dragon King was silent for a moment, then snorted. The dragon's voice carried a cold edge. Why are you asking? Lin Chuan explained Ye Lingling's trial. The dragon was incredulous. If the beasts had been weakened in the god realm's chaos, why would a god put such a test in place as if to protect them? The Water Dragon King's feelings were tangled. He couldn't help but scoff at humanity's hypocrisy. You humans are so hypocritical, the Water Dragon King said. You won't allow beasts to ascend to godhood, yet you pretend to care about them. Hey, don't shoot blanks at me, Lin Chuan grumbled. I probably know some of the backstory, but to avoid explaining a dozen things, I'll tell you everything after I find the current soul beast leader. The only true leader is the Father God. The rest of the beasts aren't worthy, the Water Dragon King bellowed. If it were other beasts, maybe not, Lin Chuan replied calmly, but the current soul beast leader is different. It was separated from the dragon god. You could even call it half of the dragon god. There was a sharp intake of breath from the Water Dragon King. Half of the dragon god? What do you know? Lin Chuan laughed and teased. Look, you're anxious again. You'll know soon enough. Now, answer my question first. Lin Chuan didn't press the Water Dragon King for everything. He kept some things to himself. The dragon was curious, but he knew there was no point in badgering, so he didn't push. When I was still alive, there were no such things as soul beasts, the Water Dragon King said after a long pause. Not on this plane, not on the others I remember. I think soul beasts only came into being after we died. He went on. Humans in those days cultivated in different ways on different planes. But the rules were clear. You absorbed the vitality of heaven and earth, trained until you reached the next level, and then you broke through. There was no system that required trapping souls or taking rings from beasts to advance. No one needed soul rings to break through. Lin Chuan listened and nodded. In his own memories, he'd seen many planes governed by divine realms, each with its own complete practice system, the yin-yang crown on the Five Elements continent, the spirit power pathways on the Holy Demon continent, the sky-speed star mark techniques in other worlds. Every system had bottlenecks, but none relied on extracting soul rings from creatures. The Soul Master system on Douluo Continent was, without doubt, a deformation. So you still can't tell me the specific cultivation method, Lin Chuan said, trying not to show his frustration. The Water Dragon King shook his massive head gently. That's probably all I know. The Father God allowed humans to become gods back then, but I never kept close to human gods. I don't understand their details. He added, and when beasts cultivated at the beginning, there weren't so many restrictions as there are with soul beasts now. Lin Chuan made a face. It felt like getting an answer that wasn't an answer. So I can't count on you for a real solution? The dragon's expression was calm. Not really. The god trial was intended to resolve the clash between humans and soul beasts and solve their survival problem. In other words, the trial's function is to find a safe place for the soul beasts to finish their test, not to invent a new cultivation system for humans. Lin Chuan couldn't help but smirk at the implication. The Water Dragon King was saying things clearly. Separate soul beasts from humans. Problem solved. Humans, future cultivation was not their responsibility. From the dragon's perspective, it was logical, but the reality was far messier. Getting soul beasts out of human settlements and into a safe, isolated habitat would be a gargantuan task. The Douluo Continent had no empty hidden plain big enough to house tens of thousands of soul beasts. In the original history, they weren't moved to another plane for tens of thousands of years, and even then, it required technologies and efforts far beyond what existed now. Mass migration to another plane was out of reach. Even if it were possible, moving that many soul beasts would draw attention. Once someone discovered the intent, Lin Chuan would likely be painted the enemy of the entire Douluo Continent. Wait, Lin Chuan murmured, thinking fast. What about the plane where the Temple of Life is? It's vast, much larger than the Stardew Great Forest, and I can't recall any humans there, only traces of animal life. It might be a viable habitat for the soul beasts. Besides, the Silver Dragon King will inherit the God of Life's position someday, so that could create a closed loop. He let the thought hang in the air. Relocating the soul beasts to the Temple of Life's plane would be a logical option if nothing else could be done. Still, if they could discover or restore another cultivation system that didn't rely on soul rings, that would be far better. The thought of trying to recreate a full practice path for humans, or to find an alternative, gave Lin Chuan a tentative plan to work toward. All right, he said at last. Since you can't help with the cultivation method, I won't press it. Go back to your rest. He meant to leave his consciousness then. The Sea of Spirits' depths had been a useful place to glean memories. Now he had what he could. Wait, the Water Dragon King called out, surprising him. When you go to meet the current soul beast leader, you must let me come out to meet it. That's fine, Lin Chuan answered without hesitation. The Silver Dragon King's current power was nothing to scoff at. If violence broke out, it would be dangerous. Better to have the old dragon present, and if it could help speak for the beasts, all the better. When Lin Chuan resumed his own body, Ye Lingling looked up at him, worried. Brother Chuan, what happened just now? Nothing important, he said lightly. I just asked an elder beast some questions. I've got a rough idea now. Really? Ye Lingling's eyes brightened. Ever since the god trial had begun, Lin Chuan had been her anchor. Without him, she wasn't sure she could have made it through the tests. She trusted him wholeheartedly. When do we leave? Lin Chuan shook his head. Not yet. The soul beast leader we're looking for is powerful, at or near god level, and full of hatred toward humans. We need to be prepared. I understand. I'll follow your lead, Brother Chuan. She bowed her head, worry and loyalty mixed in her expression. Lin Chuan smiled and ruffled her hair. Don't worry. Give me a little time. When I'm ready, we'll meet the soul beast leader and try to settle this in one go. Yes, she replied, relieved, and then left the courtyard. Alone in the quiet courtyard, Lin Chuan settled himself. He took a deep breath and summoned the silver moon spear into his hand. Sitting cross-legged on the stone bench, he laid the spear across his legs and closed his eyes. After a short while, what felt like a single cup of tea, he opened his eyes. He launched a practice stroke. The spear flashed forward and bored a neat hole through the trunk of a nearby tree. He rose, and then the spear work began in earnest. He slashed, swept, and thrust with a rhythm like rolling thunder. Each strike sounded with the moon cadence of storm and clash. Water and fire twined around the spear, amplifying every move. No, softer. It needs to be softer, Lin Chuan muttered as he adjusted. Only by softening can the force build and explode at the right moment. The two mysteries must bind closer. As he practiced, he felt the cultivation feedback in his mind. You use spear techniques to comprehend the mystery of water of all things. Your understanding deepens. You use spear techniques to comprehend the mystery of fire of all things. Your understanding deepens. You seriously study both the mysteries of water and fire of all things and find common ground between them. Their integration improves slightly. He ignored the prompts and kept moving. The water and fire sequences were powerful, but their interaction still felt like transformation rather than true unity. The mystery of water was being perfectly converted into fire and back again. That was only a preliminary fusion. What he really needed was to shore up the deficiencies in the mystery of water and then bring the mystery of wind of all things into the equation. Integrating a third element was no small task. He swept through another set of forms, the spear singing like a blade of wind one moment, roaring like a waterfall the next, then flaring like a wildfire. The three forces overlapped and resisted, then found brief harmonies. Lin Chuan felt the difficulty like a boulder on his chest. Combining water and fire had progress, but adding wind, letting all three resonate and form a single seamless technique, would require more than repetition. It would require insight. He slowed, breathing through the motions, the silver moon spear steady in his hands. This was the beginning of something big, and he knew it would take patience. But if he could truly bind water, fire, and wind together through the spear, the power and subtlety of his technique would change everything. Outside, the courtyard was still. Lin Chuan's eyes snapped open, clear and focused. He had a long road ahead, but at least he had a direction. Chapter 194, Sword Intention. Time passed quickly for Lin Chuan. To someone who took nature as teacher, the years seemed to slip by like water. Soul power training had slowed to a crawl, so he poured his energy into refining his martial skills and deepening his understanding of the forces of nature. He would sometimes spend whole afternoons lost in contemplation. Before he knew it, 3 years had gone by since he left Sea God Island and returned to Shuiyuan City. He hardly ever left the city now. He practiced in the courtyard every day and paid little attention to the outside world. Part of the reason was that Bibi Dong and Qian Renshui were busy with examinations, and the Wuhun Hall had been unusually quiet over the past 2 years. That silence was only skin deep. The Shui family's investigations had revealed that soul masters from Wuhun's branch halls were covertly gathering around Wuhun City. No matter how secretive, such movements left a trail. It was clear things wouldn't remain calm forever. For the moment, however, it seemed unrelated to Lin Chuan. Shuiyuan City itself was prospering. After 3 years of vigorous development, the city's forces had finally reached 30,000, modest, perhaps, but respectable given the kingdom's limited territory and population of just over 200,000. Elixir sales had brought in ample funds and encouraged many ordinary people to resettle here. The number of soul masters had grown to nearly 1,000, not on the level of the 2 great empires or the Wuhun Hall, but enough for a king to feel confident. In Snowfield City Palace, Lin Chuan stood alone in his training yard, 2 swords in hand, moving through a continuous, fierce rhythm. He sliced 3 times in succession. Each cut carried more force than the last. As he practiced, he felt new layers of understanding bloom within him. His proficiency with the thunder sword deepened. His comprehension of the mysteries of water, fire, and wind all advanced. And, most importantly, he sensed the 3 elements beginning to meld together through his swordplay. 2.5 years earlier, he had elevated his mastery of the water mystery to the 2nd level. Since then, he'd been working to weave wind into the existing water and fire synergy. Water was feminine and ebbing, fire violent and assertive, wind spiritual and mutable. Around half a year ago, he'd achieved an initial fusion of the 3. They began to overlap and complement one another, producing a power that was subtle but far-reaching. His swordsmanship, once unbalanced, grew complete and unpredictable in the best way. "This is what I want," he murmured. He cut through the air, and for a moment, the wind itself seemed to be parted. Using technique to probe the forces of heaven and earth accelerated his comprehension far more than sitting in meditation ever could. How long he stood like that, he didn't know. Then, as if a switch had been flipped, the aura around him shifted. His entire being sank into a strange, focused state. The courtyard fell utterly silent, not just quiet of noise, but the natural sounds themselves seemed to recede and vanish when approached. A few green leaves drifted down, but as they fell, they touched a thin barrier and disintegrated, shrinking into pinpricks of black before they disappeared altogether. Lin Chuan opened his eyes. A silver light sparkled within them, cold and bright like a moon in a black sky. Without thought, his right hand moved. He drew the blade and slashed. A river-like streak of knife light leapt across the sky. Its speed and clarity had multiplied. The line became a blur, the air itself trembling around it. The slash was soundless, like a clap of thunder that left no echo. The blade had come and gone. Its path through the middle could not be clearly traced. "I am." Lin Chuan reached out reflexively, palm open. An illusory shadow of a blade formed, faintly distorting light and space. It radiated an icy intent, To look at it was nearly painful, as if the shadow could pierce through everything. An absurd thought flickered through his mind. I could cut through heaven and earth. Is this sword intention? He had a sudden, surging realization. He vanished from the palace and in a few breaths arrived above the nearest mountain range. Suspended in the air for a moment, he chose a sheer rock face and threw himself toward it. Whoo! He exhaled sharply and uncoiled both blades. The knife light slashed so swiftly it was nearly invisible. At the instant it hit the cliff, light and shadow passed through it, as if through soft tofu. There was no sound at all, and yet when Lin Chuan landed and inspected the rock, it remained whole. He laid a hand on the face and felt hard, uncracked stone. He frowned, surprised. He sighed, then softly blew across the surface. The cliff crumbled into powder with a whisper and collapsed into a mound. The dust hung for a moment before the wind scattered it across the mountainside. This power? Lin Chuan's eyes widened. He struck again with the left blade. The same silent streak of light cleaved through the air and seemed to pass through another rock. When he touched that one too, it was intact. He understood then. The effect of this blade changed according to his will. If he willed to cut, the sword light became absolute and could sever anything. If he did not wish to harm, the light left no trace. The sword obeyed his intent, becoming both mysterious and ultimate. He stopped moving and folded inward, letting his mind settle. In the quiet of his consciousness, he reviewed himself like a record kept in the back of his head. His soul power sat at level 98, 9-ring super Douluo. He carried the blessing of the Blue Star's will. Heaven rewards hard work, a providence that guaranteed effort borne fruit. His cultivation techniques were advanced. Tianshui meditation at the 8th level, the guidance technique 9 levels of Hunyuan at the 6th. His weapon arts now included the unity of body and nature realms, archery, unity of heaven and man, spearmanship, swordsmanship, now tinged with true sword intention, as well as nuanced boxing and body skill. He dabbled in alchemy and weapon forging. His active skills included seeing and hearing domineering, the thunder knife, the flowing light movement technique, and mastery across water, fire, and wind. His soul skills, exploding arrow, ice arrow, wind arrow, rain, thunder arrow, gold gang arrow, and water dragon break among them, were all at significant levels, and now the realm of his swordsmanship had leapt again. Is it really sword intention? He whispered. He finally understood the layout of skill realms. The subtle realm fused body, mind, and technique. It granted astonishing power. The next stage, the unity of heaven and man, let one harmonize with the great currents of heaven and earth, allowing skills to possess their own independent force, much like natural things. The stage he'd reached condensed potential into meaning, visible, tangible, neither empty nor diffuse. From mere circumstance to true intent, that was a qualitative leap. It was a growth path no less potent than directly comprehending the laws of heaven and earth. Double blessings, he thought. He had planned to focus on the path of law in the future, but now he could see that technique itself offered broad, powerful roads ahead. He did notice, however, that this sword intention carried no elemental attribute, no innate killing aura, simply an extreme sharpness. Perhaps deep down what he pursued was the ability to cut through everything in his way. Regardless, sword intention was real, and its force felt far more staggering than even his thunderblade. His overall strength had risen accordingly. There would still be time to continue studying the laws of heaven and earth. He would not abandon that. But now, his cultivation priorities could shift slightly, allowing him to cultivate technique as a parallel path. That realization eased a constant pressure in his chest. He sheathed Ye Ying's swords and flew back to Snowfield City as if he had never left. No one noticed his absence. Spreading his mental power, he quickly located Ye Lingling. Lingling, he said, I plan to go to Stardow Forest in a few days to speak with the current Soul Beast co-master. You should stay in Snowfield City. Ye Lingling nodded without hesitation. Lin Chuan had already told her that the co-master's strength was not to be underestimated, likely at least on the level of a god. Bringing her along would only invite trouble. It was better to leave her behind. He smiled and stroked her hair. Don't worry, I'll find a way to help you pass the 9 tests. I believe you, Brother Chuan, she said simply. He told Shui Lanqin of his plan as well. He had barely begun to prepare when a piece of grim news arrived. The Blue Lightning Tyrannosaurus family had been annihilated. More than 1,800 members had died in a battle against a sect leader. Only a few disciples who had been away survived. The Seventh Treasures Glazed sect, one of the top 3 sects, had also been struck. Fortunately, Ning Fengji had foreseen danger and relocated most of the sect's members to Tiando City. Those saved avoided the same fate as the Blue Lightning family, but the members left behind in the Qibao Glazed sect had not been spared. The clash between the Seven Treasures Glazed sect and the Blue Lightning Tyrannosaurus family sent shockwaves through the Soul Master world. Panic and fear spread. Every Soul Master felt threatened. The Spirit Hall used the uproar to decree a strict order to hunt down the murderer, but everyone could see the hypocrisy. The Hall's proclamations looked more like grandstanding than real action. Lin Chuan frowned at the news. A storm was brewing across the land, and for the first time in a long while, Shuiyuan City's quiet felt fragile. He had his own immediate task, meeting the Silver Dragon King and putting together a plan to help Lingling through her trials. But the world outside was shifting into dangerous motion. Whatever came next, he would need to be ready. Chapter 196. Heavy Losses. Lin Chuan's gaze swept across the crowd. "Now tell me your decision," he demanded. "Surrender or die?" The shadow of death hung over everyone. With the decapitated bodies strewn on the ground, the choice seemed obvious. A man near the front crumpled under the pressure and dropped to his knees. "I surrender. I'm willing to surrender." Seeing the leader yield, everyone's resistance collapsed. One by one, they sank to their knees. "I surrender too. I'm willing to surrender." For a long moment, almost all the Soul Masters had their heads bowed. Lin Chuan nodded in satisfaction and turned his attention to the 2 titled Douluo before him. "They've all made their choice. Now it's your turn." Ghost Leopard Douluo and Spirit Kite Douluo exchanged a look that said everything. They were elders of the Spirit Hall, loyal to a degree, but not fanatics who would die for the cause. Reluctantly, they bowed their proud heads in unison. "We are willing to surrender as well." It was a single sentence spoken as if it had taken the last of their strength. Lin Chuan's smile widened. He had expected this. Not everyone in the Spirit Hall was a diehard. Outside the few super duo in the Worship Hall, the titled elders of the Elder Hall were not as steadfast as their organization's reputation implied. "Very good. You've made the correct decision." His voice carried back into the palace, reaching Douluo. At the sound, Douluo vanished, and after a few flashes appeared outside the city. Looking at the thousands assembled before him, he realized how deep the Spirit Hall's plans had been. Only the Spirit Hall could send such massive Soul Master formations. The situation was grimmer than he'd imagined. "Senior Douluo, make sure you leave something inside them," Lin Chuan ordered. Although the Soul Masters had surrendered, Lin Chuan wanted insurance. Leaving so many potential enemies in Shuiyuan City was dangerous if they later turned. "Leave it to me," Douluo replied. Poison was his specialty. He prepared toxins that ordinary healers could not counter. The 2 titled Douluo were the only troublesome cases, but Douluo's evolved martial soul had strengthened his toxicity to an unprecedented degree. Under his blend of venoms, even Ghost Leopard Douluo and Spirit Kite Douluo were brought under control. If they wanted to live, they would obey. If they tried to betray him later, the poison would flare without Douluo's antidote, and they would die. "Come," Lin Chuan said. "Ghost Leopard, Spirit Kite, follow me into the city, and clear those corpses away. They're an eyesore." The Spirit Hall's fierce strike had been disarmed with surprising ease. Back in the palace, Yerong and Guyi had been waiting anxiously. When they saw Lin Chuan followed by the 2 titled Douluo, they understood at once. "Aunt, the Soul Masters the Spirit Hall sent have all been captured and are now outside the city. Send people to make arrangements," Lin Chuan reported. Yerong nodded. "I will go personally." They moved on to interrogate the captured Douluo. Lin Chuan's gaze turned to Ghost Leopard and Spirit Kite. "Tell me everything you know. Don't lie. If you do, the consequences will be unpleasant." The 2 elders swallowed. Before, they had an excuse, coercion, but now, revealing the Spirit Hall's plans would be betrayal. If the Spirit Hall survived, they would not be shown mercy. All they could do was hope the Hall failed. With nothing left to lose, they spoke. The orders to attack the Seven Treasures Glazed Sect, the Blue Dot Tyrannosaurus family, and Snowfield City came from His Highness the Pope and the Great Priest. One admitted. The aim was to weaken the major Soul Master powers. Except for the annihilation of the Seven Treasures Glazed Sect and the Blue Dot Tyrannosaurus family, the four lesser sects have surrendered to the Spirit Hall, the other added. The next targets are major Soul Master families and Soul Master academies, and His Highness the Pope is searching for a 100,000-year soul beast, Ghost Leopard Douluo said. He plans to use it to fill the spirit rings of the two spirits. Once that's done, a full-scale attack on the two empires may begin. That's all we know. Dugubo and the others exchanged startled looks. If what the Douluo said was true, the Spirit Hall's methods were insidious and effective. The once 7 major sects had been devastated. Haodian sect had gone into hiding, the Qibao Glazed sect had suffered massive losses and retreated to Tiando City, the Blue Dot Tyrannosaurus family had been wiped out, and the next 4 sects had surrendered. Nearly all the top forces on the mainland had been neutralized. Wuhun Palace had become a dominant factor. It looks like Wuhun Palace has a huge plan and they won't stop until it's complete, Guyi said gravely. Lin Chuan shook his head with a small smile. Don't underestimate them, but don't overrate them either. The Spirit Hall took heavy losses in this campaign. Bibi Dong won't act rashly until she has those spirit rings. Keep a close watch on Wuhun Palace. If they make a move, we'll deal with it. Meanwhile, in the Papal Palace, Pope Bibi Dong sat like a coiled spring as a cardinal reported. Your Majesty, 10,000 Soul Masters were dispatched against the Qibao Glazed sect. They breached parts of the defenses with help from allied lower sect forces. But Ning Fengji moved most of the 7 treasures forces to Tiando City in advance. With Sword Douluo remaining, plus timely support from Bone Douluo and Ning Fengji, the defenders' strength exceeded our estimates. Our forces were eventually forced to withdraw. Our side suffered heavy casualties, at least 2,000 dead and over 2,000 wounded. We retreated to avoid being encircled. The teacup in Bibi Dong's hand shattered in her grip. What a mess! 10,000 sent, and yet we lost far more than them. Can the 7 treasures glazed sect be that formidable? Silence fell. Everyone present bowed their heads, afraid any comment would become a target for her temper. Slowly, Bibi Dong composed herself and motioned for the report to continue. In another engagement, we sent 8,000 to surprise the Blue Lightning Tyrannosaurus family. We achieved complete annihilation, no survivors. But we lost 3,000 in our ranks. An elder demon bear was seriously injured and is now recuperating. Bibi Dong's face was a hard mask. Good work destroying the family, but losing over 5,000 people overall is unacceptable. She asked about Snowfield City. There was an awkward pause before a man burst into the hall, dropped to his knees, and stammered, Your Majesty, news from the team attacking Snowfield City. What happened? Speak. Bibi Dong's voice was icy, and every hair on her body seemed to stand up. They've been captured. The entire team sent to Snowfield City was taken, and we can't contact our branch inside the city. Bibi Dong stared in disbelief. The detachment sent to Snowfield City had been more powerful than the ones at Qibao and the Blue Dot family. It had included Super Douluo from the Enshrinement Hall. How could they have been captured without a fight? Where are the worshippers? Didn't they go with them? Was there no battle? Bibi Dong demanded. The messenger's lips trembled. Please forgive me, Your Majesty, but all the Soul Masters sent to Snowfield City lost contact. This information came back by chance from one of them. According to him, there were no signs of fighting outside Snowfield City. The implication struck like a blow. Bibi Dong's fury became visible, but before it could erupt, most of the higher-ups present dropped to their knees and pressed their foreheads to the ground. Hu Liana, standing behind the Pope, stepped forward. Teacher, don't waste your anger. The priority is to find out exactly what happened in Snowfield City and whether our priests and elders are still alive. We must also beware of the two empires taking advantage of our losses and continue to build our strength. It was the calm, strategic voice Bibi Dong trusted. Taking a breath, she forced herself to be composed. Investigate immediately. If there's no news within 3 days, you may as well not come back. Yes, the messenger cried and hurried out. Bibi Dong then asked about Elders Ju and Gui. There was no word yet. Xingdo Great Forest was vast, and it might take them time to search. Report any findings at once, and instruct the Tiando City branch to hold their position. Don't act rashly. Also, continue infiltration according to the original plan. Do not fail me. The room echoed with yes as everyone dispersed. Left alone, Bibi Dong's eyes flashed with a chilling intensity. Shuiyuan City, Lin Chuan. She had paid far too little attention to that place. Now it had become a serious problem for the Spirit Hall. We should have eliminated them at the Spirit City, she muttered. If they grow any larger, they'll be a true threat. She set her mind on the 100,000-year soul beast with renewed urgency. Once she became a god, Lin Chuan would be no more than a soul master, and the danger would be gone. Back in the worship hall, Qian Daoliu heard the reports and could not stay calm. The team sent to Shuiyuan City had brought back nothing. Even the whereabouts of the 4 worshippers were unknown. The golden crocodile Douluo had personally led that team. He had wanted to go himself, but Qian Renshui was in the middle of the Angel 9 trials. As guardian of the angel god, Qian Daoliu had to remain and guide her through the tests. Second brother, please be safe, he whispered. I must help Xiaoshui become an angel god. I can't leave now, but if you're truly killed, I will avenge you. The worship hall fell into a heavy silence. Across the continent, the 2 empires moved troops and placed the Spirit Hall's halls under close watch, but no one wanted to be the first to openly accuse or attack the Spirit Hall. It was powerful, and going to war with it could be costly. Thus, a strained, uneasy balance returned, nobody willing to act unless forced. In the end, it was Shuan City that benefited most from the botched plan. Had the Shuiyuan incident not occurred, the Spirit Hall's campaign might have swept the board. Instead, they had lost thousands of soul masters and 6 titled Douluo, a major blow to their strength. Lin Chuan cared little for the Spirit Halls or the Imperial hesitation. Following Shui Lanxin's arrangements, Tianshui College had already relocated from Tianshui City to Shuiyuan City. With their defenses set and the Spirit Hall weakened, they no longer feared an attack. Chapter 197, Clinging to Someone's Leg, is also a skill. Several days passed. Apart from sending scouts to investigate, the Spirit Hall made no further moves. It seemed they had given up on taking the thousands of soul masters, among them 6 titled Douluo. But the Spirit Hall hadn't been waiting on Lin Chuan. They had been waiting on others. Xiaochuan, Blazing Fire Academy, Divine Wind Academy, and Thunder Academy have all sent envoys to see you, Shui Lanxin reported. Oh! Lin Chuan's eyes flickered as he finished his practice in the courtyard. He could guess why the 3 academies had come. News of the Spirit Hall's assault had terrified everyone. No one wanted to be next. He smiled. They must be anxious to come to us now. Especially Thunder Academy. Their backing, the Blue Dot Tyrannosaurus Rex family, had been wiped out. They were probably panicking. Shui Lanxin nodded. The Spirit Hall dared attack the 7 great sects, let alone the Soul Master Academies. They likely think they could be next, so they've come to seek protection. Bring them in, Lin Chuan said. Ask the deans to wait. I'll freshen up and be right there. Shui Lanxin left to fetch them. After a quick wash and a change of clothes, Lin Chuan walked to the reception hall. The 3 deans were already there. My apologies for keeping you waiting, Lin Chuan bowed as they entered. The deans rose and returned the greeting. Your Highness, you flatter us. Please, sit, be at ease. Lin Chuan waved off the formalities and took the main seat. Why have you come to Shuiyuan City? Huo Yang of Blazing Fire Academy spoke first. We won't make you wait, Your Highness. You already know about the massacre at the 7 Treasures Glazed Tile Sect and the destruction of the Blue Dot Tyrannosaurus Rex family? Lin Chuan nodded. Yes, Shuiyuan City was also attacked by the Spirit Hall. The 3 deans' faces drained. Is that true? Feng Qing of Divine Wind and Lei Bao of Thunder Academy exchanged stunned looks. Lin Chuan glanced at Shui Lanxin. Dean Shui, didn't you inform them? Shui Lan smiled and shook her head. Lin Chuan took over. The Spirit Hall sent a force to ambush Shuiyuan City. 6 titled Douluo led the team, backed by thousands of soul masters. The hall fell silent. The thought of such a force sent shivers through everyone. Lei Bao, blunt as ever, looked at Lin Chuan with suspicion. Then why is there no sign of battle in the city? Could it be? What are you suggesting? Lin Chuan cut in. Shui Lanxin rolled her eyes and Feng Qing hurried to temper things. Sister Shui, calm down. Old Lei is hot-blooded. Don't take him seriously. We won't surrender to the spirit hall. Shui Lanxin snapped back, glaring at Lei Bao. Lei Bao apologized awkwardly. Sorry, Sister Shui. It's just, if the spirit hall really sent that kind of force, I don't see who could stop them. That's the point, Lin Chuan said. They did attack, but we repelled them. Shui Lanxin spoke up. Xiao Chuan subdued their forces by himself. He killed 4 titled Douluo, captured the other 2, and seized thousands of soul masters. They're being held in the city now. If you don't believe me, I can show you. The room went completely quiet at that claim. Huo Yong asked cautiously, May I ask, what is His Highness's current strength? Lin Chuan only smiled. Shui Lanxin continued instead. If you doubt Xiao Chuan's strength, I can demonstrate mine. She called forth her martial spirit, and 9 soul rings appeared one after another, shining brilliantly. Title Douluo? Huo Yong and the others gasped. They had all been roughly equal in strength in the past. None had expected Shui Lanxin to have leapt so far ahead in just a few years. Lin Chuan gently steered the conversation back. Let's get to the point. Why have you come? The 3 deans exchanged looks. They had originally planned to unite the academies and move into Tiando City, using the Tiando Empire as protection against the coming storm. But now, seeing Lin Chuan's strength and Shui Lanxin's breakthrough, their plan felt presumptuous. Huo Yong spoke for them. Frankly, we came to propose a merger of the 4 element academies, Blazing Fire, Divine Wind, Thunder, and Tian Shui, so we could relocate to Tiando City and use the Empire against the Wuhun Palace. But with your Highness's strength, perhaps that's unnecessary. Lin Chuan shook his head. Tian Shui Academy will not merge with you to move to Tiando City, he said. The 3 deans stiffened. But there is another option, Shui Lanxin said with a smile. Instead of merging and relocating, the 3 of you could join Tian Shui Academy. The dean's eyes lit up. You mean? Feng Qing began, voice hopeful. Huo Yong and the others glanced at the 9 soul rings hovering behind Shui Lanxin, then at Lin Chuan. Whatever hesitation, they had disappeared. Your Majesty, the 3 of us are willing to join Tian Shui Academy. Lin Chuan let out a breath and smiled. Discuss the details with Dean Shui, but one condition. If you join Tian Shui and later try to break off, remember it won't be easy to leave. I think you understand. Huo Yong cupped his fists. You have our word, Your Highness. Very well, Lin Chuan said, standing. I'll leave the arrangements to Dean Shui. Excuse me. Before he left, the dean stood and bowed respectfully. After his back was turned, they all breathed easier. I never expected the prince from the Continental Advanced Soul Master competition to become one of the continent's top experts in just a few years, Feng Qing murmured. Huo Yong added, he's strong enough to contend for the very top. Shui Lanxin laughed softly. They weren't ordinary titled Douluo that Xiao Chuan killed. The 4 who fell were enshrined by the Wuhun Palace, Super Douluo above level 96. Each was comparable to several ordinary titled Douluo. The deans were stunned. That's terrifying, Lei Bao said hoarsely. Is anyone really that strong? Perhaps only Xiao Chuan, Feng Qing conceded. Thank you both, Shui Lanxin said, deflecting their praise. My breakthrough owes a lot to Xiao Chuan. Senior Dugu is also close to reaching Super Douluo. Xiao Chuan not only is powerful himself, but he raises those around him. Huo Yong and the others brightened at that. If they joined Tian Shui and worked with Lin Chuan, their prospects would improve. Shui Lanxin allowed herself a quiet sigh of relief. If she hadn't invited Lin Chuan to study at Tian Shui back in the frozen forest, she might have been as helpless as they were when the spirit hall struck. Good timing and a strong ally had changed everything. The art of holding on to the right thigh, she thought wryly. Negotiations followed, and the 4 elemental academies merged. Tian Shui Academy took the lead, with the other 3 more like allied branches, but the incorporation significantly strengthened Shuiyuan City. Days passed, and the Spirit Hall remained quiet. Their scouts had been captured, and they stopped sending out enforcement teams. Lin Chuan sat in the yard and murmured to himself, They know better than to provoke me, so they lie low. He suspected the Spirit Hall's silence was a tactic, buying time to infiltrate kingdoms and wait for Bibi Dong and Qian Renshui to complete the god test. Are you scared of me? He teased the empty air. 6 titled Douluo and thousands of soul masters were still out there. Even supreme Douluos like Bibi Dong and Qian Daoliu, level 99, wouldn't act rashly in unknown circumstances. Better to become a god first than risk failure. If the Spirit Hall intended to wait, Lin Chuan wouldn't. He had his own plan. First stop, speak with the Silver Dragon King. After telling Shui Lanxin and Du Gubo, they didn't try to stop him. Only Ye Lingling, Shui Lanxin, Ye Rong, and Du Gubo knew he was leaving. Everyone else assumed he remained in the palace. That secrecy would keep the Spirit Hall from making a move against him for now. Alone, Lin Chuan left Snowfield City. He unfolded his wind and thunder wings and flew toward the Star Do Great Forest. In half a day, he reached its outskirts and pressed on toward the Lake of Life. As he drew near, his mental senses prickled. Dozens, no, many, familiar auras swirled in the area. A thought came back to him. Lingyuan Douluo had said the Spirit Hall was searching for 100,000-year soul beast for Bibi Dong. Could this be a coincidence, or had he just flown into what they were looking for? Chapter 198. This is the field. Lin Chuan hovered high above the Star Do Great Forest, his spirit power spreading out like a tide. The core of the forest suddenly came alive in his mind, dozens of high-level auras converging there. He opened his eyes. 3 of the Golden Generation, Ghost Douluo, Chrysanthemum Douluo, and Bibi Dong herself. He frowned. He hadn't intended to get involved. He'd only slipped away to check on the Silver Dragon King, but he'd run straight into a trap. Along with the familiar faces from the Spirit Hall were at least 20 or 30 other auras, each stronger than those 3 and clearly core members of the hall. Their intention was obvious. They'd come for Xiao Wu and the 2 great soul beasts, the Azure Bull Python and the Titan Giant Ape. Lin Chuan's brows lifted. The 200,000-year soul beasts should be terrifying, but they'd already been reduced to shadows of themselves. How had the Spirit Hall managed this so quickly? He wasted no more time. With one flap of his mount's wings, he vanished from the sky and reappeared near the Lake of Life. The scene was grim. The Azure Bull Python and the Titan Giant Ape were standing before Xiao Wu, both bodies dripping blood. The python had lost nearly 1/3 of its length. Only 2/3 of its 30-meter body remained, and its wounds were rotten, black ichor and poisonous vapor seeping from the flesh. Where it touched the ground, plants withered, and even the soil lost its vitality. The Titan ape was covered in fresh scars. There was a deep chest wound down to the bone, its heartbeat barely fluttering. If that wound had been any deeper, the beast would have been cut in half. Sister Xiaowu, get to the bottom of the Lake of Life. Leave us and go, the python bellowed through pain. No, Xiaowu's voice was like a blade. She stared at Bibi Dong with uncontrollable hatred. I won't leave you in Erming. Bibi Dong's face was unnervingly calm. She'd not only killed Xiaowu's mother, she'd come now to harvest their soul rings. Her 9 soul rings glinted. One, a blood-red ring aged 100,000 years, flashed especially bright. You were that soft-boned rabbit all along, Bibi Dong said softly, amused. I couldn't catch you before, but I've got you now. Today is my lucky day. You'll be reunited with your mother soon, only in a different way. All of you will become my power. On her words, Ghost Douluo and Chrysanthemum Douluo surged forward. The Titan ape and Azure Bull Python had already been broken. If they failed to take them now, they would be worthless. The 2 injured beasts had only one choice: buy Xiaowu time to escape. If she could teleport to the plane where the Temple of Life lay, she would be safe. No matter how powerful Bibi Dong was, she couldn't cross planes at will. The beast's last hope was giving Xiaowu that chance. But Spirit Hall's soul saints poured down like a storm. Xiaowu's soul ring flared. She moved, golden light wrapping her like armor. An agility-attacking soul saint struck in a blur and grabbed at her. But his hand hit something like metal and was thrown back. It only pushed her away. Her defense is strong, but she can't keep that up forever. Another soul saint snarled, and the storm of attacks intensified. Xiao Wu relied on her golden body to avoid the worst and slipped through the encirclement, but a dozen soul saints tightened around her. The golden light shattered. She spat a mouthful of blood and was slammed into a large tree. She tried to rise, but the attackers closed in and stretched out their hands. Then a white dot appeared in the sky. Bibi Dong, who had been watching the fight unfold, froze. Everyone, move! A thunderous boom filled the air. The shockwave blasted the Soul Saints aside. Smoke and dust rolled over the clearing. Bibi Dong flashed forward to shield her allies and poured out her soul power to brace herself. Douluo and Ghost Douluo raced back to her side, their expressions grim. When the dust settled, there was a long spear planted in the ground near Xiaowu. On its tip stood Lin Chuan, as if he had materialized there out of nowhere. "Shouldn't be late, right?" he said, calm in his voice. Xiaowu's shock turned to relief. "Lin Chuan, why are you here?" "A small matter," Lin Chuan replied, glancing at Xiaowu and the bleeding beasts. "I didn't expect to run into this. If I'd been any later, you three would have ended up as someone else's soul rings." Bibi Dong's eyes narrowed. "Lin Chuan, what are you doing in the Stardew Great Forest?" Lin Chuan smiled, not moving. "Does the Stardew Great Forest belong to the Spirit Hall now? Are others forbidden from entering?" Bibi Dong's jaw hardened. "Those three soul beasts are our prey. You've rescued them. Are you colluding with them, betraying humans?" "Such an accusation is heavy," Lin Chuan said, then shrugged. "But you don't represent all of humanity, and the Spirit Hall doesn't either. Save your moralizing." Bibi Dong's temper flared. "So you side with these beasts? You must stop the Spirit Hall?" Lin Chuan's voice went cool. "I'm here on my own business, but your Spirit Hall attacked Snowfield City not long ago. I won't let you do as you please." Bibi Dong stiffened. "We never attacked Snowfield City." "Don't lie to yourself," Lin Chuan said. "Your Ghost Leopard Douluo and Spirit Kite Douluo were still visiting Snowfield City. Oh, and the other 4 Super Doulos, they've been killed by me. Not a big deal." At that, Bibi Dong's face drained of color. Even if she'd suspected it, hearing it spoken aloud was another matter entirely. A few years back, Lin Chuan had been forced to retreat in Wuhan City. Now he'd defeated 6 high-ranking Douluo. The thought unsettled her. Enough toying around. Lin Chuan's smile vanished. "Since we met here, stay and fight a while." "Deal," Bibi Dong said. She moved first. Chrysanthemum Douluo and Ghost Douluo locked eyes, then surged together. Their soul powers exploded outward in perfect harmony. Bipolar static field. Their bodies merged in aura, and 18 soul rings condensed into a brilliant golden and silver halo more than 30 feet across. The halo fell like a dome over Lin Chuan, freezing the air itself. Everything inside seemed to go motionless. "Now!" Bibi Dong shouted, raising 2 emerald sickles. She slashed, unleashing a colossal forked wave of green light, a devastating single-target soul skill that howled straight for Lin Chuan's head. "Xiao Chuan, be careful!" Xiaowu cried and leaped to intercept, but Lin Chuan shoved her back. "Take care of yourself first." Dark purple and black mist coalesced around him. The green wave hit the mist with a thunderous crash, but the mist simply swayed and then swallowed the light. The attack dissipated into nothing. Lin Chuan let out a low, astonished whistle. He hadn't expected Bibi Dong's strike, powered by a 10,000-year soul skill with deathly properties, to be quelled so easily. His own protection came from the dark demon evil god Tiger's soul ring, an ancient power over 100,000 years old. It had done its job remarkably well. Douluo and Ghost Douluo were stunned. The bipolar field they'd formed should have frozen Lin Chuan in place. Their fusion was a dual-attribute control that could stop an opponent's skills and movement. Yet Lin Chuan moved freely and used soul abilities as if nothing were constraining him. "Impressive control," Lin Chuan said, his gaze flicking to the golden and silver dome. "But that's all it is." Heat flared. A column of red fire shot up from the spear and spread a red domain outward. The red domain swallowed the golden and silver field, dissolving it completely. The backlash hit Douluo and Ghost Douluo. They spat blood and fell to their knees, crushed by a force that pinned them to the earth. One by one, other Spirit Hall members were forced to their knees, their faces flushed from the pressure. "This is the domain," Lin Chuan said, standing at the spear's tip and looking down at the humbled Spirit Hall members. "Death domain. God of Death domain. Open." Bibi Dong felt the weight of it instantly. She understood, with a chill, why those powerful Douluos had fallen before now. This domain power was alien and overwhelming, a kind of force even Douluo of the same level could not easily resist. Roaring, she answered in kind. "Death domain, God of the Death domain, open for me." Red and black lights erupted around her. A thick, poisonous mist poured forth. The poison of the Death Spider Emperor transformed into a rolling fog that corroded everything it touched. A murderous aura swept out from Bibi Dong, layered with venom and intent. Having realized just how powerful Lin Chuan had become, Bibi Dong discarded any restraint. The battlefield bristled with killing intent as two opposing death domains clashed. Chapter 199, Facing the Beast. Two forces spread out across the clearing. In some spots, their suppression canceled each other and activity resumed, but overall power had been weakened. Bibi Dong's heart sank. She found it hard to accept. 99-level peerless Douluo, master of two different paths, and still being overwhelmed? It was humiliating. "I don't believe it. Get out of here," she screamed, and soul power surged wildly through her. As the seventh soul ring behind her flared, the shadow of a colossal spider formed. Its aura swelled, more strange and terrible than before. At the same time, an even greater force burst from Bibi Dong, something beyond soul power. Lin Chuan narrowed his eyes in surprise. This was divine power, far superior to ordinary spirit energy. Her divine test had advanced far. She might not be far from becoming a Rakshasa god. "A pity you don't get the chance," he murmured. Bibi Dong's transformation abandoned all dignity and beauty. Her body became that of a giant spider, ferocious and warped under the blessing of divine power. She unleashed a blazing wave of light. Lin Chuan dropped from the barrel of his gun. The silver moon spear fragmented into twin night shadows and returned to his hands. "Cut!" he cried. The spear's light howled, trailing flame. No one could clearly track the blade's path, but in an instant it crossed the distance and collided with the spider's energy wave. A high-pitched whistle pierced the air. The giant Death Spider King barely had time to react before the swordlight engulfed it and flames swallowed the beast. Boom! The explosion rolled over the star forest. Countless soul beasts panicked, retreating from the Lake of Life, even abandoning their territories. Some fled the forest outright. When the blaze died down, the giant Death Spider King had been forced back into its original form. Bibi Dong crouched on one knee, gasping. Her once delicate face had turned deathly pale. A deep wound sliced from her left chest to her right abdomen, blood pouring freely. Worse, a mysterious, ruthless force raged inside her, resisting even her Rakshasa power. It cut into both body and spirit, making her miserable. "Your Majesty," those from Wuhun Hall cried in disbelief. They were pinned to the ground, unable to move. Lin Chuan stepped forward and looked down at Bibi Dong with cool condescension. "You have divine power, but only part of it. You haven't mastered it. That's the difference." Bibi Dong, teeth clenched, tried to raise herself. "What kind of monster are you?" she asked hoarsely. Lin Chuan smiled and shrugged. "Just an ordinary soul master, only a bit better than you." He let the words drop like ridicule. Bibi Dong laughed at herself, then bowed her head. "I lost. Go ahead and kill me." She had accepted the gap in their strength and ceased struggling, as if it were fate. Lin Chuan shook his head. "Kill you? Not yet." He looked up. "Xiao Wu." Xiao Wu's face hardened. Bibi Dong had killed her mother. Now, with her enemy subdued, Xiao Wu longed for vengeance. "I'll kill her," she spat. Lin Chuan turned to her. He remembered Xiao Wu's earlier sacrifice, using her own body to help block his attack, though it had been of little effect. The gesture had moved him. "Not now," he said softly. "I need her alive for another purpose. If you want to kill her, wait until later." Xiao Wu's eyes burned with hatred, but she finally nodded, grudgingly. Lin Chuan had saved her, the Titan ape and the azure bull python. She could not demand otherwise. Seeing Xiao Wu stand down, Lin Chuan withdrew his attention. The sword intent he'd left inside Bibi Dong still racked her body and mind. It was a poison of sorts that she couldn't purge with Rakshasa power. That would keep her weak for a long time, probably barely maintaining the rank of a titled Douluo. There was no need to worry she could cause trouble. The flames around Bibi Dong faded, the red aura dispersed. Members of Wuhan Hall kept watching Lin Chuan warily, but dared not move. Even Ju Douluo and Ghost Douluo exchanged looks and stayed still. Only Hulina hurried to Bibi Dong's side, supporting her, worry plain on her face. Lin Chuan struck again, brief, decisive. Swordlight knifed through the air, injuring Ju Douluo and Ghost Douluo. "Finish them, so I don't have to worry about any tricks," he warned, then retracted his spirit and clapped once. He cast a gaze over to the Titan giant ape and the azure bull python. who still seethed with embarrassment and restrained rage. A green radiance flowed from him. Under the influence of life force, the 200,000-year soul beast's wounds knit rapidly. Poison was purified. Broken limbs regrew. Human, thank you, the azure bull python said, complex emotion on its face. The titan giant ape remained silent, but his stance had visibly shifted. Don't read too much into it. It's just convenient, Lin Chuan said, waving a hand. He pointed at Bibi Dong. I'm leaving these ones in your care. Do nothing extra. I'll keep them for later use. Understand? They buzzed a reply in agreement. They wanted to tear the spirit hall apart, but they had to obey. This man was beyond them. I'll come back and take them later, Lin Chuan added. Where are you going, Xiao Chuan? Xiao Wu asked, curiosity getting the better of her. To see the real overlord of the Xingdou Great Forest, Lin Chuan replied quietly. His mental senses had already picked up a cluster of powerful auras, each stronger than the Titan ape and azure bull python. He suspected this was where the great evil land lay. Xiao Wu blinked. The real overlord? Isn't Da Ming and Ming the overlords here? You wouldn't know, Lin Chuan said with a faint smile. Your experience is too limited. Stay here and be good. Without waiting for more protest, he had already flown toward the auras he'd sensed deeper along the Lake of Life. As he went further in, fog thickened, blotting out everything beyond a hand's reach. Strange spiritual energy permeated the mist, interfering with anyone who tried to enter. It was designed to scatter intruders. No wonder so few know the great evil land, Lin Chuan observed, though the fog's power had no effect on him. Ever since he condensed the sword intent, most spiritual attacks had proven ineffective, so long as the opponent's spiritual power wasn't much greater. Open! The spearlight whistled, and the fog split like silk. Lin Chuan slipped through. The disturbance rippled through the great evil land. A bizarre, towering tree shivered violently. King of 10,000 monsters, what happened? Urged a nearby beast, a 3-headed, 15-foot-long creature that looked like a lion, but with 3 identical heads, its teeth shining red gold. The Red King, a 3-headed red demon dog. The tree, an enormous demon-eye demon tree, the 10,000 Demon King, answered in a hoarse voice. Someone has broken through the mental barrier I set and is rushing this way. Can that be true? The Red King barked, alarmed. Breaking the 10,000 Demon King's defenses implied exceptional strength. Before either beast could act, other presences flared into awareness. Ripples opened in the void. Lin Chuan descended into their midst. Human, this is not your place. Leave, the middle head of the Red King warned, while the other 2 heads drew breath to blast him. Around them, the 10,000 Demon King glowed with an uneasy light. A dozen powerful beasts converged, surrounding Lin Chuan in an instant. Human, damn you, roared one of them, the dark gold Fearclaw Bear King. It was a leviathan of a beast, 5 feet tall, bristling with dark gold fur and immense shoulder muscles, arms that reached nearly to its knees. Alongside it were the Hell Demon Dragon King Ziji and the Emerald Swan Biji, and many others. Apart from Emperor Tian, every great beast of the Xingdou Great Forest had appeared. Lin Chuan remained calm. I'm not here to fight you. Please step aside. This isn't your place. Leave or die, the Red King growled, nostrils flaring. The Bear King's eyes reddened with fury. Why waste talk? We've been exposed. We can't let him escape. If you won't listen, then I'll make my own way through, Lin Chuan said softly. He summoned the Silver Moon Spear. As he swung, soul rings materialized along the shaft, 1, 2, 3, 9 in all. But when the 5th ring formed, the Bear King's momentum flared fiercely. Its eyes went blood red. You killed my kin, human. I'll tear you to pieces. It launched with earth-shaking steps. Each stride was like a mountain bearing down. Lin Chuan planted his feet and met the charge, channeling spirit power and the force of heaven and earth to cloak the area, focusing attention on the bear while guarding against sudden attacks from the other beasts. The Bear King leapt, its bulk falling like a boulder. Lin Chuan flicked aside, and the beast crashed into the ground, creating a deep pit. It took advantage, rising in a flash and lunging to seize him, its fur bristling with dark gold light. Lin Chuan's soul power surged. He blurred into a residual shadow and darted beneath the bear's grasp, appearing almost instantly at its side. His spear multiplied into a storm of phantoms, countless spear shadows, striking in unpredictable succession. The bear clawed for the spear, but the speed was too great. The spearhead spun and plunged into body, chest, throat. Yet the spear only pierced skin and muscle and then wedged, stuck in the bear's flesh, refusing to advance further. The beast stared, shocked that simple strength without an obvious soul skill had been broken by the spear's force alone. The watching beasts were stunned. Lin Chuan smiled faintly and shifted technique. The earlier strikes had been probing. Now he unleashed concentrated force and rotational power along the spear's shaft. The spear spun with furious momentum, ripping through the bear's defense. It forced the beast backward, leaving countless gashes across its form. "How can this be?" the Red King bellowed, incredulous. Even from a distance it could feel the violent winds from the spear. This was no mere human. It seemed more like a humanoid beast of terrible power. The repulsed, wounded Bear King roared to the sky and charged again, outrage shredding restraint. Its pride as a power-type soul beast had been wounded. It could not abide defeat. This time, it raised its massive claws and brought them down with a dazzling golden glare. Tearing Sky Claw! The bear's enormous paws descended, dripping sharp intent and overwhelming force, aiming straight at Lin Chuan. The next instant, the world seemed to narrow as the strike bore down. Chapter 200, Silver Dragon King Guyuena. Puff! Flames erupted along Lin Chuan's body. The moment the fire blossomed, his aura surged again. Break! The flame condensed at the spear tip and shot forward with all his force. With a thunderous impact, spear and bear claw met. A blinding burst of light detonated, so dazzling it hurt the eyes. The shockwave tore outward, cracking and upheaving the ground. The other beasts scrambled to resist, but even so, they were blown back more than 10 feet by the explosion. When the dust settled, everyone looked up toward the epicenter. The bear's claw and the spear seemed to intersect, but a careful look revealed a narrow gap between them. Lightning-like fissures ran across the collision point. The surrounding space was visibly distorted. "What?" the three-headed Red King and the others exclaimed in disbelief. They all knew the sky-tearing claw's reputation. Even the mightiest of beasts would hesitate to claim it could withstand that blow. Yet here was a human doing just that. A human can take the sky-tearing claw? Impossible. 10,000 Demon King's eyes flickered with fear. The Bear Lord roared, gathering all his strength in his claws. Lin Chuan felt the force flowing back through the spear and grinned, blood-hot fighting spirit surging in him. Not so easy. No matter how fearsome the sky-tearing claw, it couldn't dislodge the silver moon spear in his hands. The two opposing forces escalated until they finally burst again. Boom! The explosion's aftershock swept across most of the great evil land. "Quick, contain the aftermath. Don't let it harm the master," BG cried in a delicate voice. In fact, she needn't have warned. At the instant of the blast, every beast reacted. Vines sprouted from the 10,000 Monster King. The Red King's 3 jaws spewed hot flame. ZG beat her wings and formed a vortex of purple-black light that sucked in the residual force. Together, they strained to blunt the fallout. When the smoke thinned, Lin Chuan and the Bear Lord stood separated in 2 huge pits, staring at each other. Their statuses, however, had diverged dramatically. Xiong Jun, the Bear Lord, was smeared in blood. His right paw and arm were burned black, hair charred, flesh dried and hanging in places. Lin Chuan, by contrast, looked untouched, his clothes unscorched. "Human," the Bear Lord bellowed, rage and a new, deep fear in his voice. The man before him was unlike any he'd faced, more powerful and radiating a deadly threat. "If you don't come over, I'll come to you." Lin Chuan's legs pushed off and he became a streak of light. Whoosh! The spear danced through the air, attacking like a storm, snaking and coiling like a constrictor, whipping and cleaving. In Lin Chuan's hands, ordinary spear techniques became deadly art. He and the spear were one. The Bear Lord swung with all his might, but his once unerring attacks felt thin against Lin Chuan's explosive power. The flames licking the spear's shaft added searing damage. After a furious exchange, no longer than a cup of tea, the Bear Lord lay grievously wounded. "Awesome!" Lin Chuan laughed, roaring with exhilaration. The clash had been intoxicating. He could have crushed the Bear Lord outright with the spear's hidden force, but he'd chosen instead to trade skill for skill. His spear technique had grown sharper with every exchange. He could practically sense the next level of spear intent approaching. The Bear Lord staggered, riddled with wounds. pride would not allow retreat. With one final roar, it hurled itself forward for a last desperate defense. Lin Chuan spun the spear. Its rotation became a dragon of fire that surged outward. Ah! The bear lord howled as the sense of death swept over it. The Red King leapt to intercept, snarling that despite their mutual distrust, fierce beasts would not stand idly by while one of their own died. But they were too slow. At the crucial instant, space itself rippled beside the bear lord, and a black dragon claw burst forth from that rift, striking toward the spear's fire dragon with overwhelming force. The claw carried a dreadful energy. The void trembled where it passed. A torrent of dragon power spurted out. At its appearance, every ferocious beast present trembled and bowed inwardly. This was the mark of Didion. Even the fire dragon compared poorly to the pressure that claw imposed. Where Lin Chuan's attack was a burning apparition, the black claw pressed the void toward rupture. "Break it for me!" Lin Chuan flipped the spear and met the claw head-on, hurling his body against a dragon claw several feet long. The tiny spear and the gargantuan black talon presented a shocking contrast. Didion, the beasts recognized the owner of the jet black claw and instinctively halted. Didion's power demanded reverence. The moment the spear and claw clashed, time seemed to pause. Then, click, a crisp cracking sound. The dragon scales on the black claw shattered as if ignited. Scales exploded into fragments, flesh and golden blood splattering. Cracks raced along the arm from fingertip to elbow. The claw finally snapped. Puff! 5 claw marks seared across Lin Chuan's chest. Blood sprayed. A dark energy clung to the wounds and forced its way into him. Pain lanced through his nerves. Lin Chuan wiped blood from the corner of his mouth and smiled wryly. "You used spatial transfer to take most of the force. Nice trick, but it won't work twice." The claw's owner had clearly used spatial manipulation to reroute power. Lin Chuan had learned a hard lesson, but only once. A space portal opened and a figure stepped out. A middle-aged man with black hair and golden eyes, sharp-featured and resolute. He carried the bearing of a superior. His right arm, however, had been broken off, golden blood dripping from the stump. He looked drained from blood loss. BG sprang forward, green light spilling from her hands. The wound sealed instantly, and sprouts of new flesh began to grow. Green light flickered across Lin Chuan as well, purging the dark energy in his chest. His wounds knit visibly. With BG's aid, Didion gathered himself and a new arm slowly regenerated. "All right," Didion said softly, voice low and magnetic. BG stepped back. "Beast god Didion, right?" Lin Chuan asked without flinching. Their gazes met. Didion's oppressive aura meant little to Lin Chuan, who remained composed. "Who are you?" Didion demanded. Lin Chuan shrugged. "Just an ordinary soulmaster." "An ordinary soulmaster." Didion's brow furrowed. Ordinary soulmasters didn't survive a strike from his dragon god claw, let alone cause him to lose an arm. "Why are you in the Stardew Forest?" Didion pressed. "I came for a chat," Lin Chuan said. "But when disagreement broke out, the bear attacked, and I had to respond." "Humanity." Xiangjun exploded into rage. Didion merely glanced back. The bear lord's fury cooled at the look. He had been saved by Didion now. Gratitude and fear warred in him. Didion turned back to Lin Chuan. "We have nothing to discuss with humans. Leave." Lin Chuan shook his head. "You misunderstand. I'm not here for you. I want to see the current Soul Beast co-master. Please make it easier." At Lin Chuan's words, murderous auras flared from Didion. If Lin Chuan had seemed a threat before, now Didion decided to keep him here, by force if necessary. "Are you sent by the God Realm?" Didion asked coldly. "No," Lin Chuan replied, "but I am taking the God exam. This is part of my test." The Red King's faces contorted with fury. "Are you here to kill the Master? Has the God Realm discovered us?" The other beast's looks grew hostile. "If I came to kill the Silver Dragon King, would I waste time negotiating?" Lin Chuan shot back. Didion didn't fall for it. Lin Chuan sighed. "Forget it. I'll talk to the real master. Can you take me to the Silver Dragon King?" "Impossible," Didion snapped. Lin Chuan's patience thinned. "What if I insist?" "I'll kill you myself," Didion growled. The beasts rallied behind him, rippling murderous intent. "Fine," Lin Chuan murmured, and his expression hardened. "Then I'll go by myself." A crimson domain erupted, enveloping the surrounding beasts. A colossal pressure poured down. Ziji and Qi Wang crumpled beneath it. Xiangjun, Wan Yao Wang, and Biji froze, unable to move. Even Diqian felt the suppression. "Stop!" A crystal-clear, ethereal voice rang out. A bead of silver light shot up from the lake of life, brighter than the sun, and suffused with a terrible presence. This aura dwarfed Diqian's. It clearly belonged to a higher order, beyond titled Douluo. Lin Chuan's eyes flickered. Could this be a god? "Come if you wish to see me," the voice echoed. The lake parted, and a silver portal opened. Lin Chuan stepped through without hesitation. The world tilted, and when the ground steadied his feet again, he found himself in a cavern beneath the lake. The space was simple and square, and at its center coiled a silver dragon unlike any he'd seen. Over 50 feet long, winged, and several times the size of Emperor Tian, the dragon's body flowed in graceful curves and shone with a pure silver luster. This was the current Soul Beast Master, the Silver Dragon King. The dragon's silver eyes opened, luminous and mesmerizing. For a strange instant, Lin Chuan felt a disorienting pull of emotion toward the beast. He quickly brushed the thought away, cleared his throat, and bowed. "You wish to see me?" The dragon's voice spoke directly into his mind. "Honored to meet you, Silver Dragon King," Lin Chuan said. "How do you know of me?" the dragon asked, eyes lingering on Lin Chuan's brow. There, the mark from the Earth God's assessment was obvious. Lin Chuan smiled. "I have my sources. You have no need to worry. I was not sent by the God Realm." "You expect me to believe that?" The Silver Dragon King's gaze sharpened. "It's natural you don't trust me," Lin Chuan said quietly. "But when you meet another of your kind, you should trust this. Fellow tribesman, the Water Dragon King, come out and meet the current Soul Beast leader." Chapter 201, The Asura God Who Took the Blame. Lin Chuan reached out with his mind and connected to the Sea of Spirit. The Water Dragon King, who had been dozing, woke at once. Mental energy flickered, and a pale blue figure emerged silently. "Have you found the current Soul Beast leader?" the Water Dragon King asked softly. "Yes, right over there." Lin Chuan tilted his chin and indicated the Silver Dragon King nearby. The Water Dragon King focused and moved in for a closer mental probe. The Silver Dragon radiated a strangely familiar aura. After a careful sweep of perception, her eyes widened. "You carry the power of the Father God. Who are you?" "I am the Silver Dragon King, a child of the Father God. And you?" The Silver Dragon King drew details from memory and answered. "A child of the Father God?" The Water Dragon King sounded bewildered. If her memories were correct, the Dragon God had only one child, the Dragon Prince, who died in the upheaval in the God Realm. "How can that be? I am the child of the Father God, so naturally I claim that title," the Silver Dragon King replied calmly. The Water Dragon King kept probing. What does being a child of the Father God mean? The hostile edge in the Silver Dragon King's mind eased after the Water Dragon King appeared. Seeing another dragon tied to the Dragon God stirred a kinship she hadn't expected. She answered patiently. "In my memories, the Dragon God was split in two by the Asura God. I escaped the God Realm and fell into this plane. The Golden Dragon King was besieged by the gods. I don't know if he survived. I want to return to the God Realm and take revenge on the gods of humanity." A murderous intent flared through her words. The Water Dragon King listened in silence. In many details, this matched her own recollection, yet the notion that the Dragon God could be cleaved by the Asura God alone troubled her. No, with the Father God's might, even Asura together with the gods of good and evil shouldn't have been his match. How could Asura split him alone? The Silver Dragon King fell silent. Her memories held no clear answer either. Perhaps the three, Asura, the god of good, and the god of evil, joined in a sneak attack, she guessed. "That's one possibility," Lin Chuan interjected, annoyed at how absurd their speculation was getting. "But does it make sense? Why would the Father God do this?" the Water Dragon King demanded. "How should I know?" Lin Chuan said with a shrug. "I'm only repeating what I've heard." "Silver Dragon King, your memories are probably incomplete, aren't they?" Lin Chuan pressed. The Silver Dragon King hesitated, then nodded. "Tell us what you know." Lin Chuan glanced between the two Dragon Kings and spoke slowly. "You both know the broad strokes of the God Realm War, so I'll skip the trivia. The Time Dragon King and the Space Dragon King betrayed the Dragon Dynasty. The Dragon Prince was killed. That drove the Dragon God to madness." Both dragons nodded. One by one, the 9 Dragon Kings were slain. The Dragon God's power made resistance almost impossible. In the end, the dragon god voluntarily drew all the god realm's resentment and hatred into his own being and sealed them inside himself. He then made a pact with the Asura god. The benevolent portion left the god realm. The malicious portion was suppressed and left behind to be eroded by time. And the dragon god decreed that, until the dragon clan was revived and the dragon god returned, the beast clans would be forbidden from ascending to godhood. Lin Chuan stopped. The two dragons were stunned, their thoughts churning. So you're saying the Silver Dragon King is the good fragment of the Dragon God, and the Golden Dragon King is the evil fragment? The Silver Dragon King asked hoarsely. Yes, Lin Chuan said. The Silver Dragon King inherited the Dragon God's elemental essence, ultimate attribute. The Golden Dragon King inherited the Dragon God's raw might, ultimate strength. How can that be? And the beast races are forbidden from becoming gods by the Dragon God's order? The Silver Dragon King could barely accept it. Everything she had fought for, reviving soul beasts, revenge against the gods, suddenly felt called into question. It's hard to accept, but that matches what I know, Lin Chuan admitted. Water Dragon King, you should remember the god realm back then. How many god kings fought on the human side? Only 3, Asura, the god of good and the god of evil. The Water Dragon King answered immediately. How strong were they compared to you? Lin Chuan asked. They were only as powerful as I was. Even the 3 of them together couldn't match the Light Dragon King and the Dark Dragon King. If that's the case, they couldn't have overpowered the Dragon God. If the Dragon God didn't agree to it, how could Asura alone have split him in 2? Lin Chuan said. That logic settled over the 2 dragons like cold water. The Asura god had no business taking the Dragon God apart. It didn't fit the facts. In the dragon's narrative, Asura had been cast as the villain for decades. Now, it looked more like a scapegoat. Lin Chuan smirked inwardly. The Asura god, with countless law enforcers under his command, was an easy target for rumor. Stories had been distorted and spread until Asura was celebrated as the god who saved the day. After a pause, the Water Dragon King slowly regained her composure. Lin Chuan, are you certain? I heard it from someone, Lin Chuan said. Whether it's true is something you should verify yourselves. There are many divine inheritors left on the continent. Since you've noticed this plane, surely the gods would also know the Silver Dragon King is hiding in the Qingdou Great Forest. Lin Chuan nodded and pointed to the isolated lake above them. There's a trial passage left by the Goddess of Life inside the Lake of Life. You can enter the trial there. If the Dragon God had been unwilling to be divided, the God realm would have seized the Silver Dragon King while he was grievously wounded to prevent a revival. The fact they haven't moved suggests something else, he added. Neither dragon could find a ready rebuttal to that. The Silver Dragon King knew of the trial in the Lake of Life and had used this place to recover. But Lin Chuan's words made him realize he had been consoling himself with wishful thinking. I'll find a way to confirm this, the Silver Dragon King said. The Water Dragon King had already begun to believe most of Lin Chuan's account, but prudently wanted to see proof. So if I understand correctly, you intend to use him to become a god, return to the god realm, and revive at the same time? She asked, indicating Lin Chuan. The Silver Dragon King's eyes flicked to Lin Chuan. Is that your plan? The Water Dragon King nodded. Fire Dragon King and I have been dead for too long. Our dragon souls are dissipating. If we don't act, we'll vanish completely. This seems the last option. The Silver Dragon King didn't mock the choice. If Lin Chuan's version of events was correct, then using a human vessel to return to the god realm might indeed be the only practical route under the dragon god's restriction. Even if it would take ages to rebuild their former strength afterward, it at least preserved their existence. Is that why you came to see me? The Silver Dragon King asked Lin Chuan directly. No, Lin Chuan smiled faintly. That's not all. What do you want then? The Silver Dragon King demanded. It's simple, Lin Chuan replied. I came to resolve the dilemma that soul beasts face now. The dilemma of soul beasts? The Silver Dragon King was taken aback. She had devoted herself to reviving soul beasts for as long as she could remember, yet progress had been scant. Their living spaces were constrained, their population shrinking, and the dragon god's edict barred the beast clans from godhood. She had long imagined that only by wiping out humanity could soul beasts reclaim dominance. The idea that a human, Lin Chuan, would propose to solve this without annihilating humans struck her as either a lie or madness. "So you plan to betray humanity?" she asked, suspicion sharp in her voice. "Not at all." Lin Chuan's expression stayed calm. "Then why help soul beasts?" the Silver Dragon King pressed. The Water Dragon King leaned in, equally curious. Lin Chuan didn't answer. He wouldn't reveal the trial's details. Handing that over would be like handing them a weapon, and he had no intention of losing control. "If you refuse to tell me your motives, I have every reason to be suspicious," the Silver Dragon King warned. Lin Chuan spread his hands as if conceding. "Accept this. Soul beast numbers will dwindle over the coming tens of thousands of years, and their habitats will shrink. If you can accept that and prepare, I won't interfere." The bluntness of the statement stung. The Silver Dragon King understood the truth of it. Even if she waited until she was fully restored and strong enough to crush humanity, by then it might be too late. Besides, a large-scale war between soul beasts and humans would almost certainly draw the attention of the gods, and the outcome would be uncertain. At least Lin Chuan's version left open options for survival. After a long pause, the Silver Dragon King's voice, cool but resolved, asked, "So how do you plan to get soul beasts out of their predicament?" Her tone suggested compromise. Lin Chuan had expected as much. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked up at the massive silver dragon looming nearby. "It's tiring to talk while you're so large," he said casually. "Can you shrink?" The Silver Dragon King blinked, puzzled, but then inclined his great head. A sliver of silver light flashed. The enormous serpentine body began to contract. In a few breath-like moments, the colossal dragon had vanished, and standing in its place was an astonishing young woman. Long silver hair cascaded to her ankles, falling like a crystalline waterfall. It gleamed as if threaded with moonlight. Her skin was pale and smooth, and her eyes were a clear, luminous purple. Her figure was lithe and perfectly proportioned. Her long legs ended in feet that seemed untouched by dust. A faint, aristocratic chill hung about her like a veil. In any crowd, she would be the one everyone remembered. Lin Chuan's eyes flickered. She certainly deserved the title of the continent's most beautiful woman. "Is this better?" the Silver Dragon King, now in human form, asked coldly. Lin Chuan recovered and smiled. "Yes, I didn't expect you to take such a human form. It's impressive." The woman, Guyuena, as she introduced herself, shook her head at the praise. "Let's get back to business. How will you solve the soul beast's dilemma?" she demanded. "It's not simple, but it's not impossible," Lin Chuan said. "At root, the conflict between humans and soul beasts is driven by cultivation and by the fact that humans covet the powers of soul beasts." He paused to let the idea settle. "Under the laws of this world, humans must kill soul beasts to gain power. That's a fundamental contradiction, one that is very hard to resolve." Guyena's brow drew into a frown. The expression made her look even more severe, even more regal, as she considered the implications. Chapter 202, The Perfect Solution. "So you're teasing me?" Guyuena's eyes sharpened. A faint, dangerous aura leaked from her. The air seemed to thicken, but Lin Chuan met it without flinching. "Calm down and hear me out first." She fell silent, watching him. Lin Chuan continued, "At the root of all this is human desire. That's the real cause. You can't simply eliminate it." "You say it's difficult. Then how do you propose solving it?" Guyuena asked. Lin Chuan gave a dry shrug. "One crude way is to let the soul beasts wipe out humanity. If humans were gone, they wouldn't need soul rings anymore. Soul beasts and death would reach a balance." "Obviously that's impossible," he added. "The god realm wouldn't allow an entire plane to become a wasteland, and I certainly wouldn't let it happen." Guyuena's expression shifted into something unreadable. "Why say that if you don't mean it?" Lin Chuan smiled and steered the conversation. "Don't worry, there is another option. Since we can't reconcile humans and soul beasts, why not separate them?" he suggested. Guyuena frowned, catching at the idea but not yet convinced. "What do you mean?" "Let the soul beasts leave this planet willingly, relocate to another world, another plane. As long as they're far from humanity, there's no risk of being hunted for their soul rings and bones. They can live and reproduce in peace." She thought deeply for a moment, then shook her head. "In principle, it's possible, But with the current state of the soul beasts, it's unreal. They can't even leave this plane, much less reach others. If you were in your prime, maybe, she added, but you're wounded now, powerless even if you wanted to leave. That's exactly why I'm here, Lin Chuan said, smiling. He kept the pace steady. Guyuena's eyes flashed, guarded. If you have a solution, speak plainly. My priority is the survival and reproduction of the soul beasts. I will not wage war with humans unless I must. Her conviction was sincere. Even if God Shura's guilt was uncertain, she was willing to set that aside for now. The beast's survival was everything. The orcs were bound to the dragon line, and when the dragon god lived, he co-led the beast clans. As the new co-master, Guyuena felt responsible for them all. It's simple. Doesn't the Lake of Life have a plane transmission channel? Lin Chuan asked. Guyuena lifted an eyebrow. What are you getting at? The gate at the lake connects to the Temple of Life plane. I've been there. It's an excellent land, only orcs, no humans. The vitality and environment are at least as good as Stardew Forest, maybe better. It would be an ideal habitat for the soul beasts. She still didn't commit. But that plane is where the Temple of Life resides. How can I trust your words? It could be a trap. Lin Chuan laughed softly. Her caution was reasonable. Trust couldn't be bought with promises. I can't prove it to you right now. Even if I asked the Goddess of Life to vouch for me, would you take her word at face value? Guyuena had no ready reply. Mere assurances were too weak. Deep down, she feared the gods might not want the orcs to survive freely. If the dragon clan returned and the dragon god revived, it would upset the balance of power in the god realm. Would gods tolerate the beasts? Would humans yield any power? These questions were real, and until she was certain, Guyuena wouldn't risk her people. She hesitated, then asked another concern. If I move the soul beasts to another plane, we sever the path humans take to progress, the soul rings that let practitioners break bottlenecks. Aren't you worried you'll make enemies across the world? Lin Chuan gave a nonchalant smile. So what? I'm not planning to please everyone, but I have an answer for that too. Guyuena raised an eyebrow. What answer? The plane's rules force practitioners to rely on soul rings to break through. To change that would require changing the plane rules themselves. She stared. Change the rules of the plane? Yes, Lin Chuan said. By making a god the master of the plane, someone with divine authority can alter its rules. Lift the restrictions on martial progress, and practitioners won't need soul rings to break through bottlenecks. At that, Guyuena finally understood why Lin Chuan had been so confident. There was a way to reconcile both sides. Move the soul beasts away and change the plane so humans no longer needed to hunt them for advancement. But to alter a plane's rules, you had to be a god, at least a god king. Otherwise, you wouldn't even know the plane's embryonic core, let alone wield authority over it. Are you sure you can become a god king? Guyuena asked incredulously. Few mortals ever reached godhood. Among humans, there had only been 3 god kings in the past, with very slow growth since. For one who was not even a god to claim he could reach that realm seemed outrageous. Lin Chuan only smiled. What makes you doubt me? Look. Hot fire flared across his skin. A halo of red power rolled outward and briefly enveloped Guyuena. She stared, astonished. Fire element power, like a first-rank god's mastery. Her surprise ran deep. Few could achieve that level without being godly. How did you do that? She asked, curiosity overcoming skepticism. This is my business, Lin Chuan deflected. But now you believe I can become a god king? Guyuena nodded slowly. If you can't reach the god king realm, then nobody can. It was a fair appraisal. The water dragon king, who had been silent, also showed signs of agreement. This human's talent was not merely blessed. It was exceptional. Even the original 9 dragon kings hadn't displayed such frightening potential. Lin Chuan steered them back. Now that you know the plan, it's decision time. Guyuena fell into thought. The proposal left her little room to object. Lin Chuan's demonstration proved he could pose a serious future threat to anyone who opposed him. He might eventually outmatch Di Tian. If his intentions toward the beasts were hostile, he could attack once he became a god. For soul beasts like her, still recovering, that was one of the few opportunities to escape annihilation. She wrestled with her thoughts, and Lin Chuan did not press. Time passed. At last, Guyuena spoke, quieter now. Give me time to think. Lin Chuan's eyes twinkled with amusement, but he nodded. That's fine. I'm not asking for an answer today. 2 months is my limit, he added. Don't take longer than that. Before he finished, Guyuena interjected, meeting his terms. 2 months is enough. I'll give you an answer then. Good, Lin Chuan said. I hope the outcome satisfies both of us. They had reached a tentative accord. Lin Chuan felt certain she would accept in the end. Her request for time was almost a formality. I'll be on my way. He glanced at the Water Dragon King. Water Dragon King, I'll try to investigate the turmoil in the God Realm and find the truth. Guyuena inclined her head. Then I leave it to you. We are all dragons. You must help when we can, the dragon said. He bowed, then dissolved into a stream of blue light and returned to Lin Chuan's spirit sea. I'll leave him in your care. Guyuena stepped close. A clean, refreshing scent brushed past. Before Lin Chuan could react, ripples opened in space and she stepped through. He followed without hesitation. The world shifted, and when it settled, they were back on the shore of the Lake of Life. The beasts who had waited nearby sensed the space's disturbance and rushed forward. They knelt in unison, reverent. Welcome back, Master. Everyone, rise, Guyuena said, voice firm though cold. They obeyed. Ditian and the others looked at her with fanatic devotion, bodies trembling from excitement. Master, you're awake, one cried. Are your injuries healed? Guyuena shook her head slowly. Not yet. Ditian's face fell. Lin Chuan prepared to leave. I'll go now, he said. He had no intention of lingering. Guyuena's gaze flicked to him before he left. I'll give you an answer in 2 months, she told him. I'll return then. Goodbye. Lin Chuan summoned the wind and thunder wings and vanished in an instant. Among the beasts, heat flared. The Bear King, still nursing old grudges, couldn't be placated. His wounds had been tended by Biji, but his hatred remained. My lord, he said, anger cracking his voice, that human killed my kin, nearly killed me and Ditian. How can he not be our enemy? Guyuena's eyes dropped, then locked on the Bear King with sudden, overwhelming majesty. Are you questioning me? She asked. The Bear King stiffened. He'd misstepped. Quickly he sank to his knees. Master, no, please forgive me. I didn't mean to question you. I was hasty and rash. I beg your pardon. To everyone's surprise, Ditian, who rarely showed solidarity with the Bear King, spoke up for him. Master, he acted in anger. Please forgive him this once. Guyuena snorted softly. Humph, once. Don't make me regret it. Relief flooded the Bear King, but he stayed kneeling until she turned away. Guyuena's gaze then swept over the gathered beasts. I know you're all wondering why I didn't attack that human. Biji bowed his head. Your Majesty, you have your reasons. We will not question your judgment. Enough of the flattery, Guyuena said bluntly. She wanted to get on with it. There is a plan. Since you're so curious, I'll tell you. She led them toward a wooden house nearby, the simple dwelling where Biji and Ziji lived. It was the right place for a serious discussion. When all the beasts were inside and settled, Guyuena began to recount her conversation with Lin Chuan.